means Mr. McGee is president.
Yeah, he's gonna see your email too, or my email, I guess. So thank you.
I promise to look away.
Okay,
It's
thank
okay.
you, John. We're frantically here because I failed to put it back on my thumb drive.
There's nothing interesting. Yeah, we can start.
Whenever you get
Okay,
it, come
very
back.
good. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody out today to our second budget workshop this year. So we are excited again to be here today. Appreciate Donna from our IT department being out here. Do this with us, making sure that everything's going well. We do have Councilor McGee at home, so we want to make sure Councilor McGee can hear it well.
Thank you, Mayor.
I know that you text and satellite to hear Debbie well, so we want to make sure that you hear all of this as well also. So,
Say something again, John.
if you have any issues, let us know and we'll rectify that.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
The number of departments tonight, we're going to be starting with fire department. Human resources was on the schedule this evening, but our human resources director is out, not doing well as also. So that'll be pushed to Friday on that, but everything else is on their schedule for people. We do have quite a few departments tonight. Fire is definitely by far the biggest budget department from several of the smaller departments that we have. So felt that everything went well. Was it Tuesday last week? I'm trying to remember when, or Thursday last week. But yeah, as we go through this, just wanted to kind of touch on a few things before I turn it over to Chief Frawley. Really appreciate, as always, the work that Brittany put in. I know that most of us are pretty new, but I know Councilor Stoddard was here during some past budget presentation, Councilor Allgood as well, and as Chief also. But as was noted earlier, it's a very sound budget, and kind of, I know in the past, I believe there were sometimes presentations made where basically it was over budget, and the council kind of had to make cuts here and there to get rid of things, and we made sure to come, as was mentioned before, the balanced budget, where it does balance out. There's still opportunity for discussion and see where some priorities may lie, but unlike years past, and Councilor Shaw, you probably remember some of those, it is a balanced budget, so which is great to have that from the get-go. So appreciate all the hard work that everybody's done doing that, and everybody else, you know, staff level, working together on that, and continuing to look at that. Make sure that the priorities of the city are met, continuing to look at positions that, you know, may be needed and augmented in that regard. So excited to continue to move through that. And as always, questions are welcome. Councils who go through these would note, and if this is presented feels differently, then typically on these kind of looking through the presentation, if you have questions to note those down and to ask those after the presenter's done that, so you can keep the note, keep moving forward with the presentation on that. So with that, we will turn the time over to Chief Frawley. He does have a budget book that each should have there in front of you with the fire department. And again, just a huge shout out to Chief Frawley. And I know we have deputy chiefs here as well, all that they do. It's the change that they've implemented with the fire department, working with the union, all that they do for our city and beyond our city. Let's say it's the Caldwell Fire Department, but they also do the rural areas as well. So they go well beyond the city limits and provide great service to our entire community. So grateful for Chief Frawley and all he does. So with that, it is yours, Chief Frawley.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Council, Rick Frawley, Fire Chief here in Caldwell, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to discuss our budget, present our goals, objectives, and review some of our accomplishments and some of our progress we made in the organization last fiscal year. In front of you, you have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to be sharing with the community tonight. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me mid-process, and I'm happy to go over any details as we do a deeper dive. So I wanted to start out with the mission of the Caldwell Fire Department. Our mission is to provide support an all-hazard prevention and response team of emergency personnel to ensure the safety of the residents and visitors of Caldwell. What's a little different about that for me in particular from the command team perspective is we really want to build a team that's made up not just of those that respond to the emergencies, but also those that are part of fire prevention, which help us mitigate and prevent emergency events. We also want to make sure that we include our fire administration staff. One team, one fight, one mission, and that way we can break down silos and work collaboratively. Additionally, we want, as the mayor mentioned earlier, we want to solidify our regional partnerships. There's strength in numbers when we work together with our partners, both Midstar, NAMPA, and some of our rural communities, like the rural district, as well as some of the other smaller departments in the region. It's very important for us to make sure that we share resources. When we have a fire, when we have an emergency, we're going to be sharing our resources. Just last Friday, we had one of our engines working in Midstar, we brought it in. Then later on that same weekend, we had help from one of the NAMPA resources. So we really want to make sure that we build those partnerships, we share those resources, because we're all experiencing the same challenges, and we can all help each other when we have that large scale emergency. Additionally, part of our mission is to address our increasing call volume. There's no confusion in terms of the growth that we're seeing and we're experiencing here in the community, and we want to make sure that we address the need for our community as we navigate through growth. So the vision of the Caldwell Fire Department is to be the preeminent agency in the Treasure Valley that firefighters will aspire to join as a team, and that the community will trust in that we can give our all and strive for excellence. So the key ways that we accomplish that vision are through striving for training and succession planning. One of the pieces that we've identified as a command team working in the last year has been looking for areas that we can build bonds between those junior firefighters that are entering into the organization, so we can build a succession plan for the future. So I know that a junior firefighter entering into the organization today can aspire to be the fire chief in 20 years. And if we can build a plan for him or her so they can become a better firefighter, better engineer, better captain, battalion chief, deputy chief, and fire chief. We also want to make sure that we support community service and education. It's just as important as emergency response. Emergency response, that's what we're here for, but making sure that we educate our community about the challenges and we want to acknowledge issues and focus our resources. So when we acknowledge that there is a challenge, we want to make sure that we come up with a plan, utilize the resources that we have to mitigate those challenges with the resources that we've been allocated. So moving into challenges and opportunities, Caldwell Fire Department is experiencing unique and unprecedented growth, not seen in the organization of 132-year history. Both facilities, equipment, personnel, and culture are all impacted by Caldwell. So as we grow, we want to make sure that we maintain focus on not just growing our facilities, not just growing our fire apparatus, but we also grow our personnel as they prepare for that next stage in their career advancement. Then we also support a really positive culture in the fire department, so that we have transparency, we have the ability to communicate any issues, and that we address issues that they come up with in the organization. That we're backing our people so that they feel supported and they're guided well. So specific to call volume, calls for service have increased 31.5% the past 4 years. We did see our peak increase in the midst of COVID in 2020. And we've seen gradual increases both prior and after that peak increase in call volume. Majority of those incidents are medical in nature, so 60% of the calls we respond to are medical emergencies. We have an increasing number of fires that we respond to. About 40% of our events are fires. Now, what's really interesting about that is that shows a higher percentage of response to fire emergencies that you see in the fire industry as a whole. So what that reflects is our resources are stretched when they respond to fires to allow for that fire activity to have more of an impact on the community. So we want to be very mindful of reducing that number, or seeing that being a lower percentage of the responses that we respond to. We have an increasing percentage impacting our fire apparatus. As you can see here, high mileage on our apparatus basically represents an increase in the need to replace and repair those apparatus on a more regular basis. So our peak engine was purchased in 2016, just turned 100,000 miles on July 4th. And normally, the kind of standard that we use in fire service because you want a fire engine to last about 10 years in primary response mode, 5 years in reserve, and about 100,000 miles is kind of like a catch-all for the mileage piece. So as you can see here, with our increasing responses, increasing time to travel and distance that we're experiencing, we're having those challenges when it comes to the apparatus and their mileage. Moving into staffing, one of the pieces that we're identifying, and we've been able, thanks to the council, we've been able to add additional staffing to our organization in the last 12 months, is we're trying to identify and solidify what our staffing needs are going to be now versus the future. So the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, is the nation's touchstone for identifying the needs that need to be addressed within the fire department in terms of staffing and apparatus. So the last survey in 2020 for staffing numbers within the fire service indicated that per population of career firefighters for a city between 50 and 99,000, the median number of firefighters is 1.29 per thousand, with a high of 2.86. Currently, with the 6 that we're going to be graduating at the academy on Friday, we'll be at 60. So we're in that place where we're still needing to build up our ranking file. But the bigger challenge we're starting to see is as we increase the number of firefighters that we're bringing into the organization, they're bringing in less experience because they're all brand new. So 32% of our fire department has less than 18 months of experience, and 62% of our organization has less than 5 years of experience. So our goal is to build our staffing levels to reflect the median level of staffing over the next 3 to 5 years, but at the same time, acknowledge that we need to make sure that we provide the training, the mentorship, and the direction that the personnel need to grow because they're so brand new in their experience levels. Now, some of the opportunities and some of the good things that have been happening as we've been addressing these issues kind of speak to what we were talking about earlier when it came to regional planning. So we've been doing some joint training with INFA. We have 6 recruits graduated on Friday out of the Joint Fire Academy. We're also working with the state to acquire additional funding for hazardous materials team response. So this is an enhanced team. Caldwell's been part of this team for 20 years, but for the first time in 20 years, working with our partners at a local level of Boise, as well as the state level of the Office of Emergency Management. We're going to be getting additional funding for equipment, for training, and for manual physicals. Another example, I think, of everyone coming together and working better in terms of growth concerns we all have. And then the fire department closest unit mutual aid. One of the pieces that Chief Shoots in the audience has been working on with MidStar and NAMPA is we're making sure that the closest resource responds to an emergency in any county. So if there's an emergency that where a NAMPA engine may be closer, that NAMPA engine is going to respond to that emergency the same with MidStar. Again, it's a good example of working together in partnerships. We're pretty proud of building those relationships. And then team planning, and this kind of speaks to some of the folks that are here in the room that are at the city staff level. We really appreciate the collaboration we're starting to build with other members within the city, whether it's the police department, whether it be finance, whether it's planning and zoning. All of the departments, IT, have been awesome to work with in the last year, and I think we're starting to build those relationships that make our lives collectively a lot easier. And so that's one of the pieces that I look to in terms of how we can function better as a team within the city. Moving on to additional opportunities. So some of the facility upgrades, we've been conducting a bond education for the public in the last 2 months. We're hoping to come back to council in mid-August to talk about those results and talk about options for the community. We're looking to rebuild Fire Station 1. It's reached the maximum saturation point. We can't fit any more personnel in there. And we really don't want to compromise living quarters for our people. But we also want to have the flexibility to add additional personnel to Station 1 because we just see more development and growth taking place in that area. And then the other piece we're working with NAMPA is a collaborative station. Station 4 at Lake Departure, donated a piece of property there that we'd like to utilize for our response along the commercial corridor. So moving on to accomplishments. So a pretty good list. I feel very satisfied with the work that I've seen. It's been the team, it's been the command team, it's been our fire prevention team, it's been our suppression line personnel, all working together. But we've deployed the ladder truck. We wanted to make sure, our goal was to make sure that we got that service within a year of it being purchased. Now, from my experience in my previous life, and I think the Chief Chu area as well, when you added something like a ladder truck to a community, it usually takes you a year to go through the training piece and to navigate through all the challenges that was staffing. So that was our goal, that we wanted to try and get to that 1 year point. We were successful. It's still gonna be a work in progress because we still are people oriented to new procedures, new ways of operating on the fire ground, things that weren't part of operations for them in the past without having a ladder truck. To give you an example, there's a piece we call vertical ventilation where the firefighters get up on the roof and cut a hole with a chainsaw. Well, that wasn't part of their standard operating procedure because they didn't utilize the truck and it wasn't staffed. That's something we're doing now. So it's a big change in how the business is done. It's a safety concern, so we make sure that our personnel are trained and are at that perfect level for accomplishing those tasks. We also onboarded 12 new firefighters with a joint training partnership with NAMPA. It's been successful. It's had some good learning points for both departments. I think it's built some good partnerships with us. We've responded to calls together, and I think that's been a great addition. Completed what was called a task book development program for our captains and our engineers. So historically, when we promoted to engineer, which is the driver, and captain, which is the flight supervisor on the fire engine, there was a test. There wasn't much of a process in terms of the validated skills. So now working with the team, we have what's called a task book, which are assigned tasks that personnel have to complete in order to validate that they've actually been trained in positions, and that helps them in terms of their confidence levels. So that's something that we added, we brought to the organization. Pretty proud of that. We're still working on the design sheet component for that. That's all part of our succession plan. We promoted 5 engineers and 4 engineers as part of that process. We completed fire investigator training for 2 additional personnel. We completed fire station improvements to support added staff. So Station 2 on Newstick, we converted one of the rooms in that station so we can have a full-time squad assigned to Station 2. Station 2 on Newstick is our busiest station. It's the station within which has that fire engine that has 100,000 miles. So by adding those 2 dorm rooms to that station and putting a squad, which is a pickup truck that has a fire pump on it, that allows us to respond with squad to medical events and to lower acuity events, so that the fire engine can be available for fires and higher acuity events, and then we can bring down the mileage on our apparatus. So I was pretty proud. I had to give my hat off to Chief Chu, who dealt in the audience there, because he handled that project within a month of getting here, and you can walk in that station and it looks like it was built into the station when it was built 20 years ago. So very impressed with how that came together. We also completed additional water and ice rescue training to support current programs. So one of the pieces that we've kind of identified is that we have a risk within the community, like water rescue or ice rescue. We know that that's something we can validate. That's a true risk to the community, and it's something that we need to put our attention and our focus on, because we're all about risk mitigation, risk reduction. So last year is an example that we had a total of 4 river rescues that took place between us and Middleton and Nampa within the waterways. We've had rescues that are kind of down on Lake Lowell. So putting our resources in our career development into the personnel that are part of that rescue team, that water rescue team, I think is really key for the community, because it's a risk and it's a skill set that we can use. We initiated funding planning for our new facility growth, including a shared facility with Nampa. That's part of our bond education plan we've deployed, and we're looking to gain information on a plan that we've initiated. Moving on to more goals. In our service deployment of Squad 12 at Fire Station 2 supporting the Carter corridor, that's going to be that's part of our goal and objective for this next year. We completed the construction. We have 6 personnel coming out of the academy on Friday. Once those personnel are trained and mentored, that will give us more ability to when we have the staff available to have that squad in service. We want to add flexible staffing options to Station 1 when personnel are available. Our goal is to have as many options as possible for service delivery. We want to make sure our truck is always in service, that our engines are always in service, but if we have additional personnel, we can staff up additional squad resources. That's our goal. We're developing a reserve program with the Caldwell Rural Fire District. That's a plan that's been in conversation for several years, and part of the budget request that I'm bringing forth to council today is to help start that program. And our goal is to start that program in the new fiscal year. Also, one of the nice things that I've seen from other departments in areas such as Star is those reserve firefighters, reserve programs can also act as hiring pools. So if you're looking for firefighters, you can recruit out of those reserve groups, those reserve projects. We want to enhance fire prevention personnel to provide for permit approvals, plan reviews, public education, and fire investigations. One of the things that Chief Perry can attest to in the audience there is the volume of growth that we're seeing and our desire and our mission to make sure that we provide the right tools necessary for plan review, for inspections, and making sure that we ensure safety within our fire prevention division. So having that component, I think, is going to be very beneficial to the community so that we can address the challenges of growth, but also make sure that we have time to work on culture within the organization. And we want to continue supporting best practices on policy development to ensure employee safety, efficiency, a unified vision with policy, procedures, practice that are key areas of growth. So one of the areas that we identified in the last year was the need to have better process within the fire department, better procedures within the fire department, so that our personnel know exactly where they are operating when it comes to not just fireground operations, but also operating within the organization itself and having a process that can support them. And I think our growth justifies that. To give you an example, yesterday evening around 5 o'clock, I stopped by Station 1 because we're doing a public education event with the mayor, and one of our fire captains, Berryman, was working on the truck, replacing some of the batteries that are on the new truck. And he is a fire captain, but he also has mechanical aptitude. He's helping us run our fleet, but he's changing this series of batteries, and he wasn't actually on duty. He went off duty to do it. And so it was to me, it was one of those aha moments where some of the positions that we're asking for in the budget, we're going to help to address that, so we can have personnel that can function on logistics and keeping the wheels and the fire engines going. So we don't necessarily have our on-duty personnel having to be involved in that level of detail. We want to focus on employee development through an ongoing mentorship and structured training and leadership, professional standards, and high-risk skills. One of the things that I'm really proud of that the team accomplished in the last year was making sure that we built a process where it was transparency, where we could talk about issues, we could work through the chain of command, but if there was an issue within the organization, address it, come up with a unified approach to problem solving. And then finally, the fire facility assessment and funding options are currently in progress with completion in the next fiscal year as part of our following objectives. Moving on to position requests and reclassifications. So the big picture that I've been talking about with the call volume, the mentorship, the culture, this is where the meat and potatoes are in terms of what we're asking for in this budget process. This position is kind of the key linchpin. This would be the first position that you recruit for, because this person is going to help build the rest of the process that we need to design and develop. This person is going to be helping us with policy, very similar to what the police department is doing in Lexipol. This is going to be one of this position's roles and responsibilities, also working on process, procedure, essentially running some of the logistics issues that we've been challenged with. And also, if we're fortunate that the community is supportive of a potential bond measure, building a fire station is also a full-time job. So that would fall into this position's scope. Now, underneath that, within admin, we're also asking for a fire administration assistant 2. Right now, we have an admin coordinator in that position, but that's the only person we have in the front office, fire admin. So when that person is assigned to another duty, we're locking up our admin, there's no one to answer the phone, and it kind of creates an insurance when that person is on vacation. So the scalability of having somebody in there to basically have somebody always available to address administrative issues or issues from some of our fleet or issues from some of our personnel. Again, it's a key position. Moving into an admin support technician. Now, this admin support technician is a position, I stole this idea from Eagle. They have a It's a lower echelon level, but essentially it's the position that can help us with our mechanical challenges with our apparatus. The example that I give you is due to the volume of mileage that we experience in our vehicles, we send a lot of our vehicles to use apparatus. Meridian, they used to be during Caldwell back in the day. And so when we send a fire engine to use, and that's about once a week at the rate we're going, we have to send a crew member over there with that resource, and we actually have to send somebody over there to pick them up. And more than likely, it's going to be Deputy Chief Shute that's going to be heading over there in the morning or the afternoon to Meridian to pick somebody up. I think it's a bad use of resources to have one of my deputy chiefs have to, do that task. And this is one of these positions where this position would help with administrative shuttling of apparatus. They'd be helping with ordering, we'd be helping with some of the supplies, working with finance, because we have the purchasing process that we didn't want to engage. And the fringe benefit ultimately with this position also is I'd look to recruit somebody out of one of the local community colleges, because the pay level is more of an apprentice level, pay level, and then they can come in, and if they're interested in the fire service, after a year or two, we can then potentially hire that employee into the fire department. Additionally, I want to reclassify a fire FPO2 position to a deputy fire marshal. Again, we want to build succession planning within our organization. The deputy fire marshal would report to Chief Harry and would function to build that team so that we can be more in tune with the needs of the community when it comes to fire prevention, as well as permits, as well as development. We also want to add 2 FPO positions, with one being a plan check, with one being plan check qualified, because we really want to focus on that ability to address we want to share it with the rural district, but this will be a 40-hour position. This would be a union position with one of the union firefighters promoting into this position, but it helps to bridge that challenge that you have between different resources doing training, because training is so ultimately important for us in the next fiscal year. Additionally, we talked about the rural district funding and division chief, reserve program coordinator, wildland officer. That's all one position that would be funded through the monies that received the rural district based at Notice Station 8. That's also going to be part of our response plan back into the city if we have emergencies within the city. And then ultimately, again, working with the rural district, we want to have 12 reserve firefighters. And those reserve firefighters are going to help build the program, the wildland program that we envision and notice in the rural district. But we really want to build a strong partnership with the rural district and make sure that we're working together to address their needs. Moving on to capital requests. So I mentioned earlier that we added dorm space to Station 2. Well, part of the challenge we're starting to see with Station 2, because it is limited in terms of the footprint, we want to add an outside gym facility, and we want to resurface some of the bathrooms in that facility so that we can support those additional personnel. Hence the request for $350,000 for those modifications to the station. Additionally, the station is 20 years old, so we're looking at a new roof of the facility. We also want to add some changes to Fire Station 3 for addition of a kitchen and an outside storage facility. The Fire Station Learning System is one of the larger items you see in front of you. So the Fire Station Learning System is what we use to alert our crews when they receive a call from the 911 system. It's what turns the lights on. It's the speakers that notify the crews that they're responding to a certain call. It's also the system that shuts the stove down so you don't burn the fire station down. Knock on wood. And it's really key because also with an effective system, there's a limited amount of time between the call being initiated and the units responding. And so without that, so one of the challenges you see is if there's a failure in the system, you have a delayed response. So it's very important for this system to work efficiently. Right now, the system is kind of patched together with 3 different systems. So one of the nice things that we're seeing here is there's an initiative throughout the Treasure Valley, both in Ada County and Canyon County, to look at one vendor. So I don't anticipate that this cost is going to be $265,000. That was the number that we had from one vendor that we were initially looking at. but there's another vendor that might be presenting for a regional approach. And we're all about regional. If we can get the same system across the board and save money, which we're looking at with this new system, which would be about $50,000 per station, that's the direction that we would go in. We also need requesting new thermal imaging cameras. The thermal imaging cameras are basically those devices that our firefighters use when they go to smoke-filled rooms that see through the smoke and see the heat bombs. And we're starting to see failures in our thermal imagers, and we want to make sure that each fire hydrant has 2 thermal imagers, one in the front of the cab that the captain used, and one in the back of the firefighter used, because they work together with each other. The bailout bags, they're an integral self-rescue piece of equipment for our firefighters. When they go into a structure and they're potentially on a 2nd or 3rd floor and they need to extricate from the building, the bailout bag allows that firefighter to latch into a hard point within the building, literally bail out of the window using a rope so slow. So it's a key piece of equipment, and one of the things we identified, we had them already in the organization, but they were homemade, so they weren't built to the level of qualifications necessary for life safety. So that's one of the big pieces we're asking for. One of the nice pieces that came up as we increase our training, because training is so important to us organizationally, is working with our partners in Public Works to get a hydrant supply onto our training ground. Currently, we don't have water, so having a hydrant out there would really be beneficial for real-time training. And then finally, one of the last pieces we want to ask for with capital is rebuilding our engine 12. That's the engine that has 100,000 miles on it. So we want to set that up for a rebuild process at the beginning of next year. Moving on to the next slide, impact fees and bond education. So we're doing an impact fee study, analysis of organizational needs. That's one of the pieces that we're talking about. Is future planning and looking at ways that we can address our facility and personnel needs. But one of the pieces that I want to bring forth to council is the ability to do a lease purchase for pre-firing, utilizing impact fees, working with resident, and placing that order as quickly as we can. Because we're looking at about a 36-month window for delivery of a fire engine if we place the order today. We're also looking at challenges with the emissions compliance changing in 2027, where that would increase the cost of fire engines. A lease purchase would be $400,000, no more than $400,000 a year for 10 years. We would then own the apparatus after 10 years. Current interest rate is 5.49. I believe it's a smart decision that I'm recommending to council that allows them to place the order at your discretion, and we place that order, and that'll help us increase that field. And then bond education, we're currently working with our consultants to get more information about size, space, location, and future needs for Station 1 and for Station 1 and Station 4 facilities. So in summary, the organization is moving in a positive direction with growth and planning for funding additional facilities and personnel relative to bond funding and facility builds. As such, our short-term plan will support the necessary mentorship and training required for our current newer workforce. Our organization and professional standards and best practices culture will continue development. That's a key piece in terms of building a healthy working environment. Culture is one of our most important pieces of the organization. I would argue that culture is more important than having the best and shiniest fire engine. It's better than having the best building to live in. It's better than having the newest gizmo. If you've got a healthy and happy place to work in, you enjoy coming to work in, and if you feel valued, you feel that your work is making a difference, in my opinion, that trumps the gizmos. That said, we do need fire engines, we do need fire stations, but it is so important to us to work as a command team. But we are also triaging certain items. We're looking at things that are things that we've done in the past that weren't necessarily supported with everything that we needed. So we're reducing those areas, and we're trying to reimagine and reevaluate. And an example that I can bring up would be our car seat installation program. Up until this past year, we would train every junior firefighter to install car seats. The police department would also do car seat installation. But we found that that probably wasn't the best use of resources. So what we'd like to do for Parsons, as an example, is have one person per shift, between our 3 shifts, be our designated car seat installation technician, so that we don't necessarily have to train everybody, and we're not creating an expert, we really need an expert to do that tasking. And then in the last slide, and this is just a nice picture part, so I just threw this together just to kind of show the fun that our people have. They really feel honored serving the Caldwell community. When I look at our workforce, at our team, and I see the energy that everybody has in the organization, it is really very empowering in terms of seeing the energy that they have. I think that's the benefit of having 62% of your workforce less than 5 years of experience. They're craving for mentorship and leadership, and we've got a really good team of mentors and leaders at Fire Counters and County Chiefs that are providing that. And they really are striving to provide the best level of service that they can with the community. The nice thing that I think that we've done as a team in the last year is we've broken down some silos in terms of working with our partners, both in the city and then also within the community, and showing the value of what it is to be our community. So, with that said, I stand for questions. If there are any components that I can offer the council.
I was just gonna, twice now, I had an opportunity to go out with firefighters and experience some of what you do, once for, I don't know, like a half hour, and then once for an entire day. And I have been on a brilliant police ride along, still take us a long way, but they never let you get out and put on all their stuff and run after people. So it was quite an experience to have to put everything on and get out and go into the burning building. And in fact, looking at those cameras and how basically what you do is terrifying to me. So I think the more tools that we can give you, whatever those are, and you've been such a great addition to the city, so I really trust what you're saying, and I think the more tools that we can give you to do your job and serve the community, the better for me, as long as the budget allows it. But I really appreciate what you do, and then going out there and experiencing it. And for me, being able to turn around and say, no, I don't want to do that experience right now is one thing, but you guys don't want to say that. And so we need to make sure that we're out there, the experience taken care of, so you can take care of us.
Thank you, Councilor.
Chief, how's it going?
Outstanding, sir, yourself.
Good. Hey, we either skipped over this or I missed it, but I see there's 5 support vehicles as well. Are those for some of the new positions that are coming in to replace the old?
Yes, that they are, thank you, Councilmember Doty. Yes, those are for the new positions, but we're also reallocating some of the existing vehicles. We need a utility vehicle, a pickup truck that we currently don't have, so we need to replace that as well as the new positions.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief. I got a number of questions here, and
Yes, sir.
and I don't want to be critical, I just want to understand. So I'm reading your chart here on your call volume. This sounds like an ignorant question, but when you say 7,467 calls, is that the number of times an apparatus is responding to something? Is that what you're defining with a call?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's an average of 20 calls a day, is what your volume currently?
And that can be a combination of resources as well. So that could be a fire engine as well as a battalion chief and a truck responding to an incident. So each time the wheels are rolling.
Okay, that makes sense, I understand that. Okay, and then I meant to hit this on the police budget as well, and I got diverted or something, but I will want to come back to it with them. We are seeing significant increases in overtime. You know, it bugs me is because those are costs that we need to control, especially when we're getting all our teams up to staff and we have the right amount of people. Can you give me some insight on why overtime is going up so much?
Yes, sir. And it's a great question because it's something that is so important to everybody in terms of having that balance of the budget. So there are two key pieces of what we're seeing with overtime. One is as we increase our staffing, in the short term, we're not able to fully exercise and fully enjoy the benefit of all our brand new people. The example that I give you is with probationary employees, after these 6 graduate on Friday, we'll have a period of time where we will have 2 probationary employees working on the fire engine, 4 people. And that's one of the pieces where we can't utilize those probationary employees to fill all of the vacancies until all the positions above them have been filled, and specifically driver and captain. We've promoted all of our eligible engineers and captains, so we need to get more experience for those firefighters before they can fill the next level of position as they kind of trickle up. And that's one of the reasons why overtime requests has increased this year. Additionally, the other reason that we're doing is that we're actively staffing for additional events, like 4th of July or Canyon County Fair for the rodeo. When we see those events and we see those high critical timelines, we want to make sure that we have a commitment of staffing that we can really provide to the event. And the example that I used for this past week with 4th of July is we needed to have resources specific to the event, and we didn't want to have to pull resources away from the rest of the city to dedicate them and lock them in the fireworks incident band team. We needed to leave those personnel there. So that's the second reason why you're seeing that increase in overtime. And then the third reason is as we start to navigate through our increasing call volume, we want to make sure that we have that ability to train our people. I use battalion chiefs as a perfect example because that's one of our voids currently is building a succession plan for battalion chief. Is my goal and intent is to have all of my acting battalion chiefs, those that step up into those positions, have them the ability to be mentored and trained side by side with the battalion chief for a period of time so that they can learn on the job versus being in a different piece of equipment and not necessarily being part of that training plan. So all of those pieces tie into the increase in overtime and the desire to also make sure that we have surge staffing on busier days as well.
Okay, so if I'm understanding it right, and you did an excellent explanation, that makes sense. But in the 24 budget, you see that more than likely you'll still be using firefighter callback because your new guys are just they're not filling a seat as the level that you need to be.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then, I'm not nitpicking, I just need to understand, what is EMT medical? It went up more than double. What is that?
So EMT medical is all the EMS supplies. And so it's EMS supplies, it's EMS or emergency medical services. I use too much jargon sometimes, but it's our medical response piece. And so within the medical response piece, as we see that call volume increase, we're using more supplies. We're also implementing more best practices. One of the nice things that happened, a couple of years ago prior to my, is there's a group that's called TVMSS. So it's the Treasure Valley Emergency Medical Services group, and it's made up of NAMPA, all the departments in Canyon County, and we're part of that team as well. So as we've entered into that working relationship with that group, there are higher levels of what's called quality improvement and assurance. And it's actually a great question because we just got the report yesterday from the committee, and what that committee does is they evaluate what our EMTs do and all the EMTs within the system, and they take a look at our quality care, and they evaluate our charting, and they evaluate our patient care. And they also provide us levels of training in EMS, and so that has seen an increase in the cost in addition to the medical supplies. And it's one of those things, last year when I budgeted, I went from, I didn't have a number when I put it in the budget last year, and what I've been tracking this year is we've been tracking the cost of supplies. We've seen that surge and that spike, so hence that doubling of cost.
So under, this is slightly weird, under your plan for the future, are you seeing firefighters get more advanced medical as you're moving forward? Is that your situation?
Yes, sir. Our long-term plan would be to get to a point where we could have, we're not gonna necessarily see paramedics on all our fire engines in the short term. Because developing a paramedic program is going to take probably 3 to 5 years. But I think what we can do in the next 2 to 3 years, as we're working through our station facilities conversations, is getting one of our squad use resources to be a paramedic squad. If we can target and hire paramedics within our recruitment process, that would be where we would want to land those paramedics. One of the challenges we have to be very careful with though, when it comes to the staffing piece is you don't want to build a system where you've only got, we go with the 3 shifts, A shift, B shift, C shift. You don't want to just have 3 paramedics. And I've experienced that in my previous life where you created an issue where you've only got 3 of a kind, and then it creates too much fatigue on those employees because they can never really take time off, or if one gets injured and it's gone, then you're always spending it overtime. So we need to get to a point in stages where we build enough personnel to give us the depth. That's the kind of the sticky wicket, you could say right now, is building that depth and building that succession plan.
Thank you.
Chief, a couple of questions for you. One of them, I don't intend to be antagonistic, but I'm asking you this because, and you've answered some of it, like having the squad at Station 2, so you preserve the time on that engine. But are we looking at analytically at all of our budget to be sure that we're cutting out those areas of success, that we're being as judicious as we possibly can? Because as we're adding to our budget, the big question we always have is government spending appropriately? And so have we looked under every rock and every cranny to be sure that we're saving in the most efficient way possible so we can spend more on some of the things that are most important? And then I have a follow-up question for that.
Thank you, Councilman Williams. Short answer is yes, but the way that we do it, which is pretty exciting, is working with our team within the city to look at ways that we can do joint purchasing, ways that we can have joint process. The example I use is we had a leak in the roof of Station 1 about 3 weeks ago that the crews identified. And up until 3 weeks ago, I went to talk to the mayor. They said, Mr. Mayor, can we utilize Larry Singh as our go-to person for facilities? Because up until 3 weeks ago, Larry was the city facilities manager for everyone, everywhere except for the fire department and the library. So, and working with Julie has been great because I reached out to Julie, because Larry reports to Julie, as Julie, hey, can Larry help us out? And Larry's been with us for 8 years, came over to Station 1. And to me, that is the problem. Having that ability to put in place big money because we've already got a resource in the city as well.
Thank you. Looking ahead, I realize it'll take a number of years to get Station 4 built, and we're just in the very preliminary stages of study, about our community, and then we'll be in the further discussions for what that study will produce, what direction to go, and then should we get there, building will take another year, depending upon planning and zoning cooperation. But my question is, are we planning for personnel already? Because what I don't want to do is see us need to add 8 people, 12 people all at once. And are we in that window where we should be? Because I don't see in your position request any line firefighters. And are we okay not adding those this year?
Short answer is yes, based on the experience level of where our personnel are. But the long answer that we're exploring, working with Shelley and HR, I mentioned to them as we were doing our budget planning, is the possibility of doing lateral firefighting recruitment. I think we're at a place now where, as we have vacancies that come up based on the budget proposal, that we can start to bring in personnel with experience and fill those some of the big problems in the short term. But working with Ray Ranch, working on a great plan that is trying to have the city position both for police and fire. So we've been working together with our partners in police as well to work together and find a way that we can add people in a judicious manner so we're not navigating the challenge we're having right now, which is 18 brand new people. And that's the thing that keeps me up at night, is knowing that I've got 18 people with less than 18 months of experience. And I can remember when I had 18 months of experience, I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know anything. So that's kind of where we're at. And we have a plan, but we definitely want to be judicious in terms of how we have ourselves.
Kind of prepper as me, I just got out of the meetings over in Africa today, to ask questions over there. One of the biggest concerns I have regarding, cooperation with other departments, the NAPA folks are telling me relative to impact fees are broke. And they're supposed to be building some Taj Mahal fire station down by Roosevelt, someplace. Do you know anything about that at all?
The last I heard about a month or so ago working with NAPA is that they were under budget at that point for their station. But to your point, we are also investigating ways that we can use some of our local partners that we've used in the city before without getting very specific, in a public setting. We've been talking to some of the key people that we use here in Caldwell to help us with some of our buildings that we have currently in the city. We're looking at ways that we can do that because we want to be able to pivot knowing that costs are really prohibitive. And we know that we have to be able to think within the budget that we might get from the community with smaller conceptual ideas. Tax administration that could be more price supportive for the community, because it does get a little difficult when you start getting into cost overruns, and that's something we can put forward.
According to those people who have been involved with that potential station over there, it's too expensive. A lot of the stuff they're trying to put into it is not needed. So, dovetailing off of that, and considering the project off of Lake Avenue, Karcher, those two stations would be really close together when you think about it. What do you see there? Because if we build one off of Karcher Lake where the land's been donated, and if they build one off of Roosevelt, it just seems to me that's
It'll definitely take, it'll have to take the analytics to make sure that as we work together in a partnership, to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. And my belief is, and my heart tells me that working together with them and with Midstar, we can land in a place where we can do some good cost sharing and reduce the costs. So I think it's going to take definitely more exploration if we kind of go down that journey.
Because the way I look at it, if they do build the Taj Mahal fire houses there on Roosevelt, they probably don't need the one on Lake and Karcher then, because of this locality is close together.
And one of the benefits too, if they do build a station or rebuild it first, is that we can share resources depending upon where it sits. Because their call volume is about 11,000 calls a year, and we're 8,000. So they're starting to really see the challenges of building as much as we are. But we want to make sure that it's equitable. That's the one big thing with mutual aid and automatic gain, is neither party should be taking on more than their fair share. And that's part of that collaboration, and ultimately a formalized mutual aid agreement between agencies. Right now, there's a lot of good conversations. We do it based upon a handshake and trust within each other, but ultimately you do need to solidify these with agreements.
And, one of the business complaints I've heard over the years, and it came up on this committee too, is that all the vehicles that show up at one residence when there's a medical issue with someone else. Do you have any ideas or comments on how we reduce that?
Well, yes. In fact, one of the great things that we're doing with that TPMSS group that I mentioned earlier is we're categorizing responses based upon the information that the call taker received to the communication center and the dispatcher. So if it comes in as a lower acuity call, it may just be an ambulance responding, or it could just be a fire engine, or it could be a two-person squad responding, depending upon the information that's related to the communication center. The other piece that we're starting to see is, from like a liability risk reduction perspective, is if it's a low acuity event, it may not be that resource responding code 3, the license centers. It could be resource responding code 2, because it's not that urgent or emergent.
Okay, so when the call comes in, who makes that decision for the city, whether, what kind of call?
Oh, through the communication center. So they have an Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. And each call is basically analyzed through a series of questions. And so after the communications personnel are taking that information, they'll ask yes or no questions. Does the person have chest pain? You know, how far do they fall? You know, are they bleeding? And they'll hit those checkpoints, and then depending upon that algorithm, that will dictate which resource responds.
Okay, well, we have all shit sizes.
Yes, right. Yes,
Okay. Just another comment on staffing. In my prior life, I was responsible for a $300 million budget, had a lot of people working under me. And I usually had somebody come in my life, it was the way to that did analysis of how we're staffed, where our needs are and all that. And I don't want to diminish the expertise of folks that are here and that are making some of these. But has there been a thought to a program where you hire a professional consulting group to come in and say, yeah, we need this, or you don't need that, or instead of just in-house situation?
Councilmember Stock, yeah, that is very on point. That's something we've definitely, we've talked about within the command team, as identifying some of our professional services funding to do what's called the standards of coverage. So standards of coverage is third-party analysis to show you where you sit organizationally. Our goal would be to deploy that if we can. I didn't put it in my plan because I didn't want to overcommit or deliver, but to look at something like that towards the end of the fiscal year, while we work with Raymond and Finance on some of the other bigger planning components that we like to deploy. But it is one of the pieces that we talk about because it not only helps validate your decision making, but it also can give you a different set of eyes and say, you didn't consider this, or you didn't address this in your sheet. So I believe it's always good to have a third party come in and evaluate you.
I would really encourage that we do this lesson for it, but I think it's very important for not only currently, but for the future.
Yes, sir. I think. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, city staff, and community members, I just want to thank you for your time.
Can you just hold on, just one second, another quick question. I've got this relationship with the county, sometimes better than others. Are we benefiting from the 911 money, these days? How do they help us out? Can you give us a little bit of explanation?
Yes, the 911 funds have been great. In terms of our relationship with the county and county communication center, on the fire department side, we don't have a line budget item for their level of contribution for fire. I believe the police department does. So we've actually really benefited on the fire department side with the relationship that we've had with that team. And to give you an example, there's within the considering dispatch system, within that system, working with some key people in communications, they're working on an iPad version of that CAD system that we're going to have access to, so that we won't necessarily have to have a big Datalux computer monitor sitting in the command vehicle, because to give you kind of a sense, because sometimes I talk jargon, we have these big computers inside the command vehicle, cost $5,000, that we really don't need, but that's just to your point, sir, about this is the way it's always been done. If you can use an iPad that's $800 to $1,000 and have that app built into the system, brings down the cost. You're not investing as much money in a data terminal that you're really not going to utilize its maximum potential on. And that was something that we're getting 911 funds through that relationship that we have with the county. So it's been great. Also, to Chief Shoup's credit, as we work on what's called the automatic vehicle locating, or AVL, for the closest fire engine, that's been a project that Canyon County Communications has been very beneficial in helping this as well. So, short answer, sir, it's been good.
Oh, thank you.
Well, good.
Thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate that. Great questions in that regard. So next up is our wonderful library director, Lacey, present the budget for the library. And our water boy, delivering the water bottles and looking at
all of you here this evening. Thanks for the opportunity to let me chat a little bit about the library and present some of our goals for the upcoming fiscal year. And I do have in the packet, there's 3 documents, and I don't know if it's possible. I think 2 of the 3 were available online. If not, that's right.
Oh.
Just keep going. So the first one that I have in the packet is our strategic plan. So of course, going into planning for the new fiscal year, any budget requests or improvements, everything that we do to enhance our services is of course tied to our strategic plan. And this plan runs through 2022 to 2025, which means that I've shared quite a bit about this last year with you all. So I won't go into too much detail on every topic, but I will note a few specific goals and focus areas as they apply to FY24 budget requests. So the first goal, we won't get into this in too much detail, but essentially it deals with our financial sustainability. So some of the things that we've been working on is to establish a public library foundation in an effort to identify some long-term funding opportunities for us. Additionally, we look to create a diversified funding strategy by continuing to look for different grants, sponsorships, partnerships, things like that, and increase awareness of our library endowments funds. So the gala that we've been hosting annually for the last few years is a part of that. But goal number 2, and that is going to be enhance the library's community engagement efforts. So there are a couple of items here that are specific to FY22 budget requests. So spend a little bit more time sharing some information about those. So the first, develop and implement a target community outreach and marketing strategy. Expand our collections to reflect the needs of community members. And then the third, broaden our physical reach within the community by implementing 24-hour library access points. So I will explain a little bit about those 2. So the first, as it pertains to community engagement and outreach, we, over the last few years specifically, are really starting to recognize the limitations of our physical space. The library was built in 1976. I wasn't here to see what Caldwell was like in 1976, but I imagine it's quite different than what we see today for sure. So our space was not designed to support the number of folks, the number of business transactions, the volume, and then also the staff area that we have to work in as well. So in order to navigate those challenges, we made a significant effort in the last 3 or 4 years to increase our outreach efforts, meet the community where they are, be present in some of the spaces that they're naturally gathering to try to compensate for that, and get out there and be as much service as we possibly can. And that is going to change to funding request for a position, which I will dive into in a bit more detail in a moment. And then that third piece right there, broadening our physical reach within the community. So in order to compensate with the limitations of our physical space, we hope to implement 2 24-hour access library points. And so this is a full service option. It can be placed, I hate to say like a vending machine or a kiosk, but that's kind of the idea. Outdoors, it can be indoors, but essentially what that does is provides access for patrons. They can check things out, pick up bowls. It is also a Wi-Fi point, so any internet service or anything like that, they can access from there as well. So that is in our goal for the next few years, and specific to FY24, we hope to implement that by the end of the year, ideally one of those points, but certainly into the spring. And we have opportunity to use either fund balance, a one-time request, or we have the endowment fund as well, and we anticipate that will be $25,000. So that is one of our significant requests that move up for the coming year. And then there's nothing here in the strategic plan that is specific, very specific to the coming fiscal year. It's tied to funding. But just to go over some of our other goals, we of course hope to expand our marketing activities and reach broader audience, and increase our library users. That's always a goal for us. And then the final goal is to meet community demand for technology resources, skills, and development. And we see every day a lot of folks that come in that need help with resume building, job searches, just technology skills in general. So we're working to give them the support that they need to assist them there as well. And then moving on to the second document packet. It should say CPL service stats compared to other Idaho libraries. So just some information about what this is specifically. As I'm looking into budget planning with the board, another resource that I use to gauge where we are in comparison to other libraries in the state and specific to the Treasure Valley is this annual statistic report from the Idaho Commission for Libraries. Every library reports every year on a variety of topics, anywhere from circulation, budget, collection, programs, hours. It's really a delight to put all that data in every year. Not my favorite thing, but it is very useful to have that result to see where we all align with other libraries. So I won't spend a ton of time on this, but there are some categories there that you will see: population served, annual budget, staff size, number of location, budget dollars per person, and public service hours annually that we are open. And I do have Caldwell highlighted there. So you will see specific with the budget and staff size, it's certainly not unique to us as a department, but we are definitely coming in last or close to last place in a lot of those categories. And the bulk of that can be tied to just the staffing. We're only able to do so much, only able to do what we can with what we have. So in order to kind of make some of those improvements in those areas, we do have a few staffing requests for FY24, and I will go into a bit more detail about that. I did include also our organizational chart. I don't know if that's helpful for you to follow along as I talk about a few of these positions. But the one new request that we have is for a full-time position, and it's for an adult services assistant position. The estimated cost of this is going to be about $74,000. And what this position will do is primarily be front-facing, so helping with the information desk, tutor appointments, one-on-one reference questions, genealogy, some of those questions that are a bit more complex or take a bit more time. And we're finding that we need more assistance with staffing that desk as usage continues to grow. And then two other changes that will be helpful but are less significant as they relate to the budget. We have currently a part-time technology assistant position, and we hope to change that to a full-time position. And then also a part-time technical services position that we hope to move for a full-time position in FY24. We're finding that it is, just in our case, extremely challenging to attract folks for the part-time positions that we have and then retain them for those part-time positions as well. So we're hoping to make that transition, help with our staffing needs that way. That was, just in summary, those two significant, I guess, funding requests for FY23. One is the 24-hour library, the second being the positions. And I wanted to leave opportunity for questions as well. So that was, in a nutshell, the highlights that I had to share for FY24. I can certainly go into more detail if you'd like, or answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Lacey, I have one quick question. It's just striking to me. Can you tell me why health insurance is worth $130,000 this year on your budget? It's a pretty dramatic increase.
Sure. We will just share more, but would you like me to? I'll be happy to.
It's really. So there's a couple of reasons. So first of all, it's because of the way I am budgeting health insurance. So instead of budgeting in the actual of what people's selection is, so if somebody is single, you're budgeting in average. So that is the biggest difference. The second is because we have a lot of part-timers and we're getting part-timers to full-time, and so that's an increase, but not a huge increase in some.
Before we do our fee structure, are we, within our partners in the other cities, are we behind because a lot of people are delinquent or where do you sit on it?
Yeah, we are very reasonably priced, probably one of the lowest in the valley. However, that's when we take that into account, we do take the budget as far as how much property taxes are actually being paid by residents, and because the library has received typically, especially historically, a smaller amount of that based on the population size. It is lower, however, it's very comparable to what a resident earns.
What frequency work staff as part of the
Sure, so we have been fine free for the last, I believe, 4 years. And that is very similar to other libraries, so we don't charge late fees on books, however, if late books or fees or things like that aren't returned, they will be billed in central collections. We don't want to be necessarily aggressive and find someone, out of using the library, so we want to get items back and wonder where funding comes from, so things are not rich, everybody has their bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lacey, appreciate that. I think we got the mic up and working again, so we do want to use those as much as possible, or not only for the council, but keep it anybody else that's on listening or watching, so if it's not working, we'll put them up and working for you, so. And again, just to thank Lacey, what she does for our community, for the library. The library really is a hub of the community. They do so many things, so many ways you would in their life for people that just, need clothing, need food. I mean, it's not just books, but they provide so much for our community. People find the library as that hub for those needs and get away from want. So appreciate all she does. So next up will be our economic development team. So Steve Jenkins will be presenting the budget for our economic development. Do you need anything pulled up on a? What we got next partnership to pull it up. So okay, that was it, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, Council, thank you all for having me this evening. Stephen Jenkins, Economic Development Director. I put together a brief PowerPoint. I'm going to just cut through this as quickly as I can. There's a lot of information on there, so if you're interested in any of the details that you see before you, please feel free to reach back out. I'm happy to elaborate in greater depth. But for the sake of time tonight, I'll just kind of brush through some of the details related to the process with the economic development budget. So the primary mission of Caldwell's Economic Development Department is to encourage economic growth in the Caldwell region that will create diverse, quality jobs and provide a strong financial basis for a healthy community. The department focuses on supporting the expansion of existing businesses and assisting any retail, commercial, and industrial establishments to develop in the city. So a wide variety of things tied to what we do in economic development. Of course, we look at business retention expansion, we look at job creation, we look at business attraction, and we hope to retain some of the businesses that are currently operating in Caldwell. So those are key factors. Of course, we promote Caldwell as a great place to do business. We look at shovel-ready sites, we look at long-term planning, strategic objectives tied to our growth strategies here, and then community site visits as well. And then we advocate for key business issues. So this is our Red Carpet team, where we try to be the most efficient department or development services team in the state or in the region at least. And we certainly focus on customer service oriented delivery system here as it relates to permitting and approvals and things like that. And the urban renewal districts and incentives, those are all tied to those key business issues. And then we facilitate collaborative partnerships. So we work with Boise Valley Economic Partnerships quite a bit, State Department of Commerce, and of course the Caldwell Chamber, Plaza in 2018. And there's 300 events and activities and 62,000 ice skaters, and that's all attributed to our great partnership with Destination Caldwell. So a lot of activity down there. Started off, by the way, with about 25,000 ice skaters, so it's increased quite a bit. Growth and trajectory, so just want to take a moment to highlight the 5.2% annual growth, which put us at the 14th fastest growing city in the United States according to the census. That was this past year. So we're still at a very high growth rate in the city. And it's something that, of course, is an impact not only to the city and our infrastructure, but in the business climate as well. So looking at businesses that relocate here, that bring their employees here, and often looking at new ways to support them as we grow. Just to give you a little bit of history as it relates to Caldwell population. Back in 2000, there was 25,000 people, roughly, or 26,000 roughly in the city. Now we're at 70,000 people, so a big difference in how that's grown and the leaps that we've taken over time. And of course, there's an impact related to business and workforce and all those things. We try to pay attention to those metrics as well. Household income has increased quite a bit over time. So we went from, when I started here about 4 years ago, about $47,000 for household income to $62,549 for the household income. So that increase is welcome. And average age of 31. So all those things are continuing to change. So some highlights in 2023. Again, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but as it relates to retail, we've had a bunch of retailers open and I am in our operations here. And then for industrial, I just want to highlight the overall investment in square footage. So we have about 1.5-ish square feet that has been approved or either that's under construction and approved in the city, and then that equates to $273 million in investment. So pretty dramatic in terms of what has come in. And then in terms of multifamily units and units that we can anticipate, so this again is under construction or approved, we have about 1,510 units that we're looking at there. And then in our department, we've got 11 site visits, and I actually have a site visit tomorrow and again one later this month. So that I guess we can say 13 in this budget cycle. And then we have jobs. So 2023 is an estimated 20,466 jobs. And then by 2050, we're estimated to jump to 13,807 jobs. And then just Sky Ranch has grown quite a bit. Just again, going to go through this really quickly, but we have roughly 50 businesses operating and 2,000 plus jobs in the business park, just right near the airport here. And then with North Ranch, again, we anticipate quite a few jobs. It's almost 100% spoken for within the 114-acre business park that's out there, but a lot of business activity, a lot of interest, and this includes commercial and industrial uses. And then just for the budget, as it pertains to economic development, we are requesting an increase of $2,000 for travel, and this pertains mainly to per diem increases and cost increases tied to travel, so airfare, leisure, hospitality, those types of things. Dues and association fees, $2,000 request. This mainly pertains to an organization that our department is looking to join. It's Industrial Asset Management Council. This is a group that works with site collectors from across the country that have projects that may want to come into a region. So it is more of a building relationship effort and trying to get close with some of these groups that they have an interest in investing in providing job opportunities in Caldwell. Special projects increase, this is $2,000 as well. And this mainly pertains to site visits and things that we do to host different groups that come out, and also appreciation packages, things like that. Office equipment increase, this is relative to some equipment that we might need on the road. So if we don't have our laptop, if we have other technology that we might take, or we can hotspot opportunities, so we can have internet available to us as we travel. And then to 2022, just going back this past budget cycle, I was able to move $2,000 from the advertising budget while moving into special projects, and that was kind of a trial run for us. We did not anticipate the number of site visits that we had this year, so we do anticipate a little bit of an uptick there, which is why you see the increase for this budget cycle. And with that, that's all I have. I'm happy to answer your questions you might have.
Steve, thank you for all you do. If there's anybody that they're, what you face for your budget more, I know. One question, have you enjoyed your office here at the airport? I think you've been in 3 different offices since I started. What repair and maintenance for building for if you're here in this office, and what do you expect to be for the next year? Because you got 25,000 in there.
The mic is working, so you have to raise it before it can.
Thank you very much. I was gonna make something up, so I appreciate it.
So in the economic development fund, in the 200 division is what you're looking at, that is not actually for the airport, that is for the medical center building. So it is what that repair and maintenance fund is for, the medical center. So for that budget, yes, sir.
So then everybody's contributing to that, whether their office is in there or not.
So it used to be, that money used to come from, the buildings payment used to pay for that. The buildings that we used to contribute for, we used to fund that, and there's a significant fund balance in there, but we can use on that for a little bit. So until, the city all went into it, and then we will always pay it down. So it takes care of, so right now it takes care of like pigeons on the roof. It's very minimal right now.
Okay, that makes sense to me. We've got to pay for the building. I'm just wondering why Steve Jacobs is paying for it if he's not in that building, and likely won't be.
Michelle may be able, it's a history thing, so Michelle might be able to answer that question better for me.
Because I'd rather put $100,000 in your travel budget.
When the TVCC Center was created, it was considered an economic development project to provide education to the community and educational programs. So when the Urban Renewal transferred the TVCC Center over to the city, they decided to house it in the Economic Development Fund for the separate division, Division 200. As we received revenue for the lease on that building, it went into this division. That revenue then was offset by the maintenance for that building, so that we didn't have to bear the cost of any one individual department. Steve's division is 100 division, it's funded separately, and with that separately, the revenues are separate from the revenue from the TVCC building. It has since built up a balance because the amount of revenue was received as a part greater than the $25,000 a year we currently commit. It does average about $20,000 to $25,000 a year on commitments for HVAC, elevator, and kitchens, and other things that building has. And so we have decided to the rest of the fund balance in there before we decided to allocate that to any one entity.
On your budget, let's see, on the admit and payroll services, that's gone up quite a bit, and that's due to your ed.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's due to the cost allocation plan.
okay. And then the other thing, city attorney services, you had nothing budgeted the previous years for that, so that.
Cost allocation plan as well.
Okay, So it just guessing on what purposes they might need, or based on some data that we have in the past.
So for the attorney services, we use an allegation from our attorney, Mark Oakley, and so he looked at past usage and where he spent his time, and that's how we allocated it. And we spent his time very little with economic development, and so we did not allocate anything to those funds because they did not really spend their time with the attorney. It was very disappointing.
Thank you.
We're just in love with Steve.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time as always, and I'm happy to answer any questions offline as they come up, but thank you again.
Okay, we do have scheduled for a 15-minute break. I'd like to take that now and we'll come back and around 5:45 for planning and development. We'll say 45. What? It's not that long.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present the fiscal year 2024 budget for planning and zoning department. I thought it was kind of important to start off with giving a little background of the last year because our department has been through some significant transition and change over the last year. When I started at the same time that we hired a senior planner and a director. So the three of us were new, and on that same day, we had 3 other vacant positions in our department that needed to be filled. And we didn't get those filled until September of 2022. Since then, we are on our second director. We are on our 3rd vacancy of our senior planner position, and it is still open today. We advertised it in March. We've really been struggling to fill it. There's really not enough planners in this valley to fill all the planner openings within the government and the private market. So we may actually end up having to underfill that position here pretty soon with possibly a planner 1 just to get somebody in the door. We've had a ton of staff onboarding and training. So currently 60% of our staff is brand new. With 70% of our staff having less than 5 years of experience. We've also experienced heavy volumes of applications. We recognize that we have outdated zoning ordinances. They were never updated when the new comp plan was updated. Now we're getting ready to go through another comprehensive plan update, so we'll just kind of wait on some of those ordinance changes until that's done. But we are going to try to move forward on some of those significant priority ordinance changes that we need to get in right away. And then we have basically a lack of admin staff for our code enforcement. With the volume of applications that we've had coming in, we have currently 1 admin person within the whole planning and zoning department. And she has just been bombarded with sending out legal notices and mailings and tracking, hearing schedules, and we cannot even get to code enforcement liens and abatements that need to be, letters that need to be sent out for reimbursement. So unfortunately, the challenges faced over the last 12 months have caused some stress and strain on the department as a whole, but it's also provided us an opportunity to develop and build a new and stronger identity for our department. Streamline processes and become more efficient, and really work to create ways of providing greater value and service for our customers. So our department mission statement is to ensure quality, well-planned, and sustainable physical development and growth of the city, while responding to the changing needs and values of the community.
protect Caldwell's unique physical, social, and natural environment and resources, preserve open space and historic structures, and ensure that our citizens live and work in an attractive and safe community through the application and enforcement of the City of Caldwell's ordinances and land use policies. So as we work to rebuild our department's identity and to create the best planning and zoning department in the region, we really started looking at why, what, and how we do what we do. Why do we do it? Who do we serve? What functions do we perform, and what are we missing? And how to achieve our tasks and duties? And is there a need for more efficiency? So with that, our goals are to provide superior public service in a responsive and courteous manner, to strategically plan for the overall physical development and growth of the city through periodically updating the city's comprehensive plan and ordinances, and by preparing functional specific area plans and master plans. All too often, planning and zoning departments will have a whole bunch of zoning and very little planning. So we are trying to get staffed up because we really want to spend a lot of time planning for the future growth and development of Caldwell and make sure that we're doing it right. Another goal is to provide guidance and assistance on land use, development reviews, and zoning issues, and review proposed development projects to ensure compliance with land use standards. Create and preserve a high quality of life for its residents, workers, and visitors through the implementation and enforcement of plans, ordinances, and policies that provide standards for land use control. Provide fair and impartial treatment to the people of Caldwell with the enforcement of ordinance violations while keeping voluntary compliance as our main objective. And provide the public with a timely response to complaints, being attentive to their concerns, and taking the necessary steps to ensure complaint resolutions. So Planning and Zoning Department has multiple functions. The first is long-range planning, which is in the blue box to the left, which includes the creation, implementation, and updating of plans and policies that guide future development, performing land use and physical analysis, community design, and coordination with regional planning efforts. I'm not going to read every single one of these, so I guess you guys can read them as I go through. The second is current planning, or what some would refer to as zoning, which includes administering the zoning and subdivision ordinances and managing land use applications by reviewing and evaluating their consistency with adopted city plans and policies, reviewing building permits, construction drawings, performing inspections, and providing technical support. The third function is administrative and operational, which includes creation of applications and checklists for developers, homeowners, businesses who want to submit applications to the city, development guides to help them get to the process and be able to understand the process and make sure that process is consistent, coordination of roundtable meetings, scheduling and tracking of public hearing notifications, creation of agenda and meeting packets. Next function is business services, which includes things like our business licensing, home occupation permits, transient, merchant, other temporary use permits, and sign permits. Then there is code compliance, which includes enforcing city ordinances for things such as junk, trash, weeds, debris, land use and zoning code enforcement, and parking enforcement. And lastly is other and support services, which includes staffing or serving on several boards, committees, and commissions, planning education and public art mural applications, and then certificates of appropriateness that's issued through the historic preservation. So despite all the obstacles I mentioned earlier, our team has made some significant accomplishments in a very short time. And I'm just going to go through a few of these. So the biggest thing I want to point out is that we really looked at our team and what they were doing, and we have been able to streamline several internal processes for staff and for the external customer, identifying many duplicate tasks that we have now eliminated. We've cross-trained staff, but we've also made each staff person the lead expert on specific topics, so that when somebody calls from the public, they know exactly who to reach out to. If that person can't help them, they'll find the information for them. That way they're not bouncing through 3 or 4 different employees trying to find the information. We started using the Citizen Serve software for plan review, routing, and tracking of all applications. when I came on board, we were using Citizen Serve simply for them to submit applications online, but they weren't using it for doing reviews or for tracking or for updating status or for scheduling hearings. So we've now went back and customized that over the last year, and we are using that fully now on almost all applications. We've streamlined the land use process, and we've cut out a minimum of 30 days from the approval process. We've created review checklists for our planners, again, with having most of our staff being really new and having a really busy workload. It's very beneficial to create some checklists for them to just help them as they're going through the process. But then as they're using those checklists, they can turn those checklists over to the applicants to see what they're missing also on their plans. We've updated the entire naming schematic for all land use case files. We created new and updated staff report, development agreement templates. And we've created an application and process for requesting formal subdivision name changes and recorded final plats. Just some of the other accomplishments that we've done is we have filled some vacancies, trained and reactivated the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have created spreadsheet and processes for tracking all subdivisions and developments, including the different housing types. We just went through that process recently. In the past, there was no tracking mechanism to know how many dwelling units were coming in, what type of dwelling units. We knew how many lots, but that was about it. So now we've got that spreadsheet in place, and we can keep tracking those moving forward. We drafted several amendments to the codes already. We're working on more. In fact, we have a code amendment to address application hearing procedures that's coming before the P&Z here in July. It will be into council, I believe, in August. Some of our goals for this next fiscal year is to complete an update and refresh of the comprehensive plan. Our goals are to complete a major rewrite of our zoning and subdivision ordinances and to create a major gateway and corridor design overlay with design guidelines. So going into our fiscal year 2024 budget requests, I've highlighted up here, you'll see that both our operations and our personnel budget is showing a slight increase. And I'll start off with personnel. So this is our present department organizational structure. As you can see, we have one administrative assistant. She's actually titled as an executive assistant. We have our current and long-range planning to the left. To the right is our parking and code compliance. And then the green box right there does show a parking enforcement officer that is coming to City Council on July 18th for City Council consideration. So just looking at some staff comparisons, I thought this was interesting. We are not asking for any new positions in the planning side of things this year, but I thought it was interesting to compare what we currently have to other jurisdictions of similar size. I will note, I know my population numbers are a little bit lower. I did not go back and update these yet, so they're slightly lower than the 70+ thousand for Caldwell right now. But it's still close enough. If you can see across the board in the green, the planners, those are actual planning positions. That doesn't include like maybe your deputy director or your directors or your zoning administrators that might be supervisors but are also helping out reviewing plans. This is just strictly the actual planner positions. As you can see, we have 3 planners when we're currently staffed. Right now we're working with 2 planners. And across the board, we are the lowest staffed, not only in our region of comparable, but also compared to Pocatello and Idaho Falls as well. And then on the planning, down below the bottom line, that's our planning techs and admin specialists. We do have a little bit more than some jurisdictions on planning technicians, which maybe gives us the opportunity to look at some of our technicians for possible promotion up into a planner position. So the planning and zoning personnel strategy, it's to continue to try and fill our vacant planner 2, planner 3 position, potentially may have to backfill it with a planner 1. Potentially reclassify and promote a planning technician to a planner 1. This would allow that position to continue to do some of the current tasks, but would also allow them to perform review of minor and less complex land use applications. Provide training for staff to maintain certifications. We currently, within our planning staff, hold 11 professional certifications. We're pretty proud of that. We want to provide training for 2 to 3 staff members that are seeking to get certified over the next fiscal year. So we're excited that they want to do that and are putting forth the dedication for that. And then, like I said, we're not asking for any new positions in the planning side of things, but if growth continues at the current pace, we may need to reconsider that next fiscal year. For the code enforcement staff comparisons, I was not able to get every jurisdiction to respond prior to this meeting, but as you can see from the ones that have responded, we are still at the lowest code enforcement officer capacity compared to Nampa, Idaho Falls, Ada County, and even we're lower than even Able. We have 1 full-time position and a part-time position currently. So in this next fiscal year, we are asking for 1 additional full-time code enforcement officer and 1 full-time admin. That admin will be split 50% planning and zoning and 50% code enforcement. So code enforcement personnel strategy. Historically, our code enforcement has been primarily reactive and primarily only enforcing weeds, trash, debris, junk, and other nuisances. Virtually nothing for land use and zoning compliance. So we have started in-house training on the enforcement of land use and zoning compliance. We've given direction to proactively monitor downtown and major gateways and corridors. And we're looking to expand the staffing to ensure coverage of the city limits, with the goal that 1 full-time officer would focus on nuisance and junk and trash beautification type complaints. The other would focus primarily on land use and zoning compliance, and the part-time would be a floater that would bounce back and forth and help where needed. So our proposed fiscal year 24 organizational structure, the 2 dark orange boxes are the new positions we're requesting, which again is just a full-time code enforcement officer and a new admin assistant that will serve 50% planning and 50% code enforcement. So just looking at a little bit of an explanation, and that cell moved again. Sorry, my little 8 is down on the second line there. But when you look at personnel budget, the current fiscal year for 2023, where we were at $804,000, our proposed fiscal year budget has increased by a little over $360,000. $146,000 of that is for the 2 new employees. The rest of that is for increases in insurance, retirement accounts, cost of living, a set aside for compensation study, and other benefits. Operational budget, we're asking for an $18,000 increase. This is for your annual software costs and new employee licensing costs for that first time licensing. We do have $10,000 in there for Hispanic outreach. Those are matching funds for our comp plan update ARPA dollars that we were granted. We have a little bit of money in there for design review guidelines. I believe it's about $4,000 something. And then we have a little bit of additional money in there for employee training, and this is for our new employees, but it's also training required to maintain the CEUs for our certified staff. So in conclusion, I want to thank the finance and the human resources department and the IT department. They all helped out with putting together this budget with data and information that I did not have. So I appreciate that. And I want to thank the mayor and city council for allowing me to present, and I'll stand for any questions.
Starting with kind of my common theme, in 2021, the overtime budget was $122, and past 2 years it's been $15,000. Can you explain to me how your department is using $50,000 in overtime? Am I reading that right?
So if you're looking at the expense, that's how much it was budgeted, but I don't believe that's the actual that was spent.
Yeah, I think.
Is that the actual?
The actual
Gotcha.
2022 was 7,400. But in 23 and 24, it's 15,000. I just wanted, I guess my question is just, what do your employees do that generates overtime? Where's that showing up?
Sure, absolutely. So most of our employees, when they do generate overtime, it is attending city council meetings, planning and zoning commission meetings, historic preservation commission meetings, design review committee meetings. We staff all of those different committees. This year, we'll probably see a little bit of overtime for going through our comprehensive plan update, because we'll have a lot of public workshops and outreach into the community. We have tried recently to really encourage employees to utilize comp time instead of putting it towards overtime. However, if they choose they want overtime, we have to allow them to have that. But a lot of them have transitioned to the comp time is actually more important for them to just have more time to take off work.
That makes it relatively short-handed, huh?
It does.
And then one that's really near and dear to my heart, you touched on it briefly. When we sit on the council, we have developers come in pretty much every council meeting, and they promise the moon. But a year from now, what they promise or what they say they're going to build is different or less, or how do we make certain that we're getting what they're showing us on those initial presentations?
Absolutely, great question. So when I came on board, we recognized through kind of that whole deep dive into processes that we were missing some things. As we were going out and doing our inspections, we weren't capturing everything on the inspections that we should have been looking for. Even the things that we were looking at, like landscaping, we weren't capturing everything. An example would be we weren't checking to make sure the trees were 2-inch caliper and not these tiny little sticks out of the ground. So we've created checklists for our planners for when they go out and do an inspection. And they're now checking those off as they go through. We're providing training to them so they know what they're supposed to be looking for. We're also helping them to recognize that every project is different. So before you even go out there to do that final inspection, you need to be checking to see what the conditions are. You need to be checking to see if there's a development agreement. Is there a special use permit? Because all of those may have different conditions that are applicable to that development. So I think we've really captured a lot of that. Where we were really falling short is on our special use permits, because a lot of those aren't necessarily related to a building permit. It may be an existing building that they want to do a special use out of. And so we didn't have a trigger of, like, say, a certificate of occupancy or something to go out and look at those conditions. So what we're doing with special use permits now is we're actually putting it on our calendar to trigger an inspection for us to go out there after a certain point in time so that we can check to make sure they've met all their conditions. And generally that's within that year, because the special use permits have a year to submit for a permit. And so we trigger it in a year to go out there and make sure that we're capturing that.
How do you handle neighborhoods or subdivisions that are built in phases over 3 or 4? Are there triggers that kick us back out there to make sure the next phase is compliant with the original project?
Absolutely, there is. So when they have those phase developments, usually they'll have plats. Now, not always, but for the majority of those phase developments, they do have platting. And so each time they do a phase, they have to come in for a new final plat for that phase. And so we have the opportunity to look at each phase as they're coming in. And sometimes they have bonding for those phases where they can only go so far. They can only build so many homes without having had their bond released and signed off. So we're triggered at that time. We work really closely with the engineering department. So as they're out there inspecting site improvements as well, they notify us, the building department notifies us. We now have it set up online where people can actually request inspections online as well. But we also track our developments through our spreadsheets now and through Citizen Serve. So that as we track the phasing schedules for plats for expiration dates, and so we're going out there and checking on them consistently throughout the process to see where they're at, in the development cycle.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
Robert, thanks for all you do, and especially the staffing challenges that we face. Of course, one of those we've talked about is our ability to pay people a competitive wage and attractive in the city of Caldwell. And I think along those lines, it's important for us to keep asking this question, even though it's somewhat of a record, because I want to be sure we're maximizing the dollars that we have. Have you gone through your budget and looked closely at other areas that we could maybe trim fat in? I'd be embarrassed to stand up here and say there's no fat anywhere in the money we're spending in the city of Caldwell. I'd love to say that. I'd love to say that we're the most judicious in our spending of any government entity ever. But I'm just curious, have you looked closely for ways and places you can trim it up so that we can maybe do more in those areas that are most important?
Yeah, of course, I definitely have. And there could potentially be some areas that we could trim it up slightly. For instance, I believe we budgeted, and Raylan may have to look it up, under professional services, we budgeted a little bit of money for design review guidelines, to possibly have maybe an outside consultant help us. We could potentially do some of that stuff in-house. It's not gonna save a ton, because I wanna say it was only maybe, well, we'll wait, I'm not gonna guess what it was. I'll wait till she looks it up, but it wasn't a ton. The 10,000 for the Hispanic outreach, we have to leave it in there because that's part of our matching funds for the ARPA dollars. Other than that, to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot of savings in our budget, because a lot of it is operational as far as like software license fees or copier. We lease a copier, so you have that fee to lease a copy machine, but we split it between, other departments. So, I mean, I think comparatively for other planning and zoning departments, our operational costs are actually pretty lean. I think we are seeing more of our costs on the salary and benefits side, but it is so that we can attract the staff that we need, the more experienced staff, the dedicated staff that are willing to, stay and be passionate about Caldwell. And I think that's where you're seeing some of the larger increases in our budget over the last couple years, has just been trying to be more competitive with other jurisdictions on what they're paying. And of course, as we know, the economy has gotten so much more expensive. So jurisdictions and even private industry sector across the state has really tried to raise what they're paying people just to help people to survive.
$1,250.
How much?
$1,250.
Yeah, so it's a very minimal, like $1,200 for just some help with some design guidelines. I mean, we're always open to reevaluate again. And we are going to take a look at our fees again here shortly, and make sure, I know we did a fee increase just last year, but I do feel like there are a few couple fees that we're missing. Like for instance, if somebody is doing just paving a parking lot, like for instance, we had Walmart call, they're repaving their parking lot. We need to do a site plan and a landscape plan review, but we have no fees on our fee schedule to charge them for that if it's not associated with a building permit. So there are a few fees that we're missing out on that we could probably capture, but it's not gonna probably be anything of high significance.
So, and maybe Raylan can help us with this too. If that's only $1,200, what's the $15,000 increase in professional services?
keep checking. I'll keep checking, Robin, is the Hispanic outreach program a mandatory thing we have? Or is it the program that helps the department on the river?
So it's not mandatory, but when you're doing a comprehensive plan update, you really do want to look at your demographics. And if you have a large population of Hispanics, you really do want to provide some additional funding for outreach, because that is one of your lower demographics that don't participate in that comprehensive plan process for public participation, because a lot of them either don't speak English or they don't understand. And so we really do want to make this a true citywide public participation. And some of those demographics are really key to helping us in some of our areas of Caldwell to put forth those planning efforts and initiatives. So it's not mandatory, but we do feel it is definitely critical for our community.
Okay, I just want to make one other comment on the fee structure. If there are some fees that we're not charging, we should, even if it's a small amount, I think we need to shore that up so we're getting like we're supposed to.
Absolutely, I agree.
So it's this way down.
Oh, that was the one I was actually talking
Oh,
about.
sorry, apologize.
No, you're fine. So yeah. So it looks like there's, let me just see what we've added here. Okay, so I see. Okay, so we do have 30,000 in there for downtown corridor gateway plan. So we could trim that down. That we could trim down. The rest of them, the 10,000 for Hispanic outreach, the hearing examiner to pay for the cases that they hear, the P&Z commission to pay per member per hearing, and then there's a tiny bit of money in there for historic preservation, and it's the same amount that it was last year. So really, that's where that increase is coming from, is for the Gateway Corridor Plan and to revisit our downtown plan to incorporate not just the city center area, but the entire central business district.
Okay, so the $15,000 increase in professional services is for that purpose primarily? Okay,
It is.
thank you.
It's
okay.
So, Councilor Scotty, you mentioned about, the Spanish process of her budget. And really, citywide, we are required by federal funding that we receive to have what we call an LEP, which is a language efficiency. We have to do that to meet federal standards. And there is one in place. And we are audited on that every so often. In fact, there's supposed to be an audit coming up next year that I have to produce what we are in line with their standards. And one of those is that LEP, and we're following that, not just in planning and zoning, but also in areas, for instance, the street department, that they're putting out signage that may be bilingual, that our water department is hanging notices on the door when they're turning it off for non-payment, that it's in Spanish as well as English. Those type of factors, we basically get points for, that we are meeting those requirements on a federal level that we're required to do. So your budget really aligns with what overall that we have to provide. Does that help?
Oh, thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. Any other questions, concerns? Thank you very much.
Very, very quickly. code enforcement by the now, so what are you taking away?
So on the code enforcement, when we looked at what they were actually budgeting for over the years and what they were actually spending, a lot of their money in there was for buying stuff like signage to post sites for public hearings, because they currently do all of our posting. One of the amendments we're bringing before council here in the next month is to convert that responsibility over to the applicant. That's how most jurisdictions do it. They make the applicant or developer post the site themselves. So we're gonna transition into people posting their own site for public hearing and then providing us a photo and documentation that it was posted correctly. Some of the other stuff is, it appears to me that it was a little bit over budgeted for abatements and cleaning of properties. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it just means that what we're seeing is more voluntary compliance where we haven't had to go to the abatement side of things. And so I think it's safe to lower that number a little bit because I don't think we need it that high because we haven't been using it. Thank you.
Huge thank you to her and everything she does and changes in our planning and zoning department there. She's very well. She's doing a great job, so we appreciate that very much. As mentioned, human resources, we're gonna do that on Friday evening, so that moves us into IT. So it's Jose Menchaca, our IT director, that will be presenting the IT budget. That's be kind, or maybe everything will crash. Nothing will work here.
Get pretty quick and short. You only want to talk here. So budget increase is gonna be 260,000. Most of that is due to staff. I'm asking for another IT staff, entry level. And heard for the last few days. Everyone is adding personnel. And that would average just like one person per 100, which is now compared to all the people we have for them. Most of this is to replace the core switch. We're gonna switch to Office 365, which is currently running Office 2016, which is gonna expire in 2025. We need to change either go to 365 or we get the next version of Office that's good for it. That cost is probably we can say. Got budgeted for our core switch that runs the whole city. That's gonna end up live 2025. So we need to get that into the budget. So core switches for TVCC to move over to TVCC. Website upgrade, 50K, and we're using Star Trek's continuous for other reasons. That helps us with intercepting any ransomware, phishing emails, malware coming through. Those are bolts. Any questions? They're all in that. You're doing good.
One up there.
Very good.
Good. So I just want to go back over the numbers with you in comparison to other cities. So by city employee, you had the average of how many IT, the national average of how many IT or fairly comparable averages around our area. I know where I work, we have a significant amount of IT personnel. I'm just wondering what the average is per city employee.
Ours compared to Napa, we're running less than half of what Napa has. County, 20 something IT folks. City of Twin Falls, they're running about 10 boats.
So Jose, for the longest time, you did it by yourself. I don't understand what the problem is, why you think you do it.
It's running too long.
So, my question was, are we still contracting with Orion, and where are they listed here? I mean, what would they fall under here?
We are under professional services.
Okay.
The benefit that Orion has that we don't have in-house is we don't have a network engineer, and that's at least 6 figures in. We don't have a server engineer, which is another 10 figures in. But if we have issues with those that come up from time to time, they take care of those issues.
Their rates seem to have stayed pretty consistent as far as.
They have not changed since we brought them on board 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many employees do you have today, right now?
There's 3 of us.
3 of you?
And they're all under a year. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Jose, I appreciate it. Yes, for years, he was the only one, so you guys will give us some help, and, Marlon, too, tonight, I appreciate him, Noah, the other, and then Emmanuel, our web administrator. If you haven't looked at our website lately, it looks so much better. He's really a great young man, and doing incredible work, and make this much more user-friendly, and just looks so much better, so I appreciate all the work that they all do, so. If you're at the 4th of July festivities and saw the knights battling each other with axes and swords and everything, Marvin was one of those, as well as Noah, one of our other professionals. So I think Marvin won, if I remember right. So he won the event, so way to go. So anyway, that was fun to have him be part of that. So, okay, that moves us into our wonderful city clerk and her presentation.
City. I need to say that really coincided with that is it's kind of like mission of the city clerk's office is to manage and preserve the official records of the city by leveraging technology to assist the public in accessing public documents and information, to support the needs and requirements of the mayor, city council, and staff, to issue city licenses and permits, to provide documents and information for city elections, and to provide these services in a manner that is professional, efficient, transparent, fair, and courteous. So as you can see, the city clerk is really the official record keeper for the municipality. Recently, the state of Idaho was graded in an overall study that was entitled The State Integrity Investigation. And in that study, they realized that public access to information overall statewide, the grade they received was a D-. For procurement purposes, the grade they received was a D+. That's not a really good stance for the state of Idaho overall. However, I want to report that the city of Caldwell has, on the other hand, received public recognition excelling in access to public information and accurate record retention policy. And that shows that we just have a really strong team within our department. I am so proud of all of my persons that work as a team to provide the best possible access to public information that we can. It used to be that we had boxes and cupboards everywhere.
with documents that were never scanned in. And we have been really working hard right now with planning and zoning department especially to bring it up to standards where everything is put into a Laserfish program and accessed publicly on our website. It has been such an asset. So our goals for this coming year, again, coincide with our mission. Number one is to continue efforts to orchestrate archiving citywide documents for permanent electronic records. As I mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Department is the first one that we have been working on for about a year and a half now with them to get that up to standards. But our next department will be the Finance Department, and we'll help them with all of their records as well, getting them in electronic storage. We're also working with the cemetery, which also the administration end of Canyon Hill Cemetery falls under the city clerk's office. And so we have been working to capture documents that should be accessible to the public for the sake of research, for genealogies and whatnot. We have a new program that was instigated about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now. It's called SIMS. It's been a true gem to the public. It's online for their access, so you can look up all kinds of information about their relatives. But there's still a lot out there that we can add to that program. So we are working consistently to do that as well. So this just shows who our staff members are that we are working with on a daily basis as well. And then what we need to do as far as being able to provide continuing education for those. As a clerk and deputy clerk, you are required to have continuing education. And the purpose of that is so the municipality is very aware of what state and federal guidelines are required, as well as timelines, as far as notification, legal documentation, all of that. We work hand in hand in our office with our legal staff as well to make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed, that the municipality itself is practicing best standards. With that, we need to continue our efforts for continuing education. With Helen Miller, she's our newest deputy on staff with us. She is going to be seeking her first level of certification with the state of Idaho through Association of Idaho Cities, and we also have an arm of that that's the ICCTFOA, which is the Clerks and Treasurers and Finance Officers certification. Angie Point has received her first level certification within the last 2 years. She is now moving forward with her advanced certification. On my end, I have an international certification that I also must keep up with. I have the state and international certification. Goals for this year. One of our largest goals, and you'll see that, and it's in our budget, that it makes quite a stance as far as the amount goes. But I have been working with our codification company, which is American Legal, and they have approached me about conducting an audit of our entire city code. And actually, I received a letter that kind of explains what that audit entails. The American Legal Publication Company has over 3,400 clients across the United States. Some of our larger clients include New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. We're proud to say that we now have 120 Idaho cities that are also using their services. We feel an accurate code reviewed by a staff of 16 licensed attorneys in their company is the most critical part of the codification project. A legal review example is included with this proposal. Our team can also provide free model ordinances in areas not currently covered in your ordinance during the codification process and in the future for no additional charge. An audit has never been conducted of our Caldwell City Code. And as we read through different things, some things come to light that they're either replicated or possibly have been missed of being eliminated because of changes in one part of the code and maybe didn't follow through with another part. It's time for us to have a legal review of the entire code to make sure that we are in sync throughout the whole document. Planning and zoning has an advantage because they're in one section, but the rest of us, our various areas are spread throughout 12 chapters. So sometimes it happens that we just need to be, frugal with our, updates, and it's obvious that some of them have been missed over the years. So with that in mind, here is my budget, and you'll see that I have included that legal audit, which is $27,400 is what they employed. That is a one-time. It will take 2 years for them to actually conduct the audit. It is in my budget under special projects. If you're following along there, you'll see that large increase under that line item. And then upgrades in our software includes an upgrade that we recently made to Just Voya, which is our public records program that we use. We are now able to include and review email documentation within the Just Voya program, which was not capable of doing that before. But because of that, now there was an upgrade charge, and that will be a continual charge now of a couple $1,000s each year. But trust me, it was the best thing that could ever happen to that program, because now not only I can review them in that fashion, but so can our legal counsel review them. And before anything goes out that could be derogatory to us in a public record fashion. Personnel training, there is an increase because obviously we've included another certification process in that. I have not gone to the international conference. This will be 3 years that I have not gone. It's time for me to renew that. I have a window of opportunity that I need to do that, and this should be the year that I do that in order not to lose that certification. And then computer upgrades. We have been limping along with some computer softwares and different things that are now time to be upgraded according to our IT department. It's time. So I've included that in our budget as well. And that is the extent of my budget presentation. Is there any recommendations that you might have or questions that I can answer?
We're curious where the international conference is.
This year, it happens to be in Calgary. Yeah. Sometimes it's stateside, sometimes it's not. This one happens to be in Calgary. Anybody wants to join me?
That's why we were asking.
Okay.
Hey, Izzy, I noticed your personnel training line ends in 2021. Is that money somewhere else now?
There was, yes, and you want to address that because you're right, there's a reappropriation of that in your other line.
So you're gonna see, personnel training used to be under, so we have in our DL structure, the last 5 digits are, 4 is our personnel cost and 5 is operating. And so personnel training was under personnel costs. We moved it to employee training. So you're gonna see that move, within 2023's budget. You should be able to see that.
Right now, I think it's under travel and leave.
Or travel and leave. Those are the 2 places it moved to. So the last 5 digits of the GL stream should start with 5. That is the operating portion, where personnel training starts with 4. And so it used to be under a personnel cost instead of a operating cost.
Travel and meeting went up significantly, and it's 5.
That would be operating.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where it is. Any other questions? I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to serve you as a city clerk. I've enjoyed my time. It'll be 22 years in office. Thank you.
Yes, and yeah, a round of applause, well deserved. So we say thank you to us, but we say thank you to you, because we could not function and do what we do without the work of our dear Madam Clerk, Dyer, every one of us here. So thank you, Dave, for that. Everything that you do. Okay, so that brings us to our last presentation, which was done by myself. So this will be in regard to the mayor's office, including the mayor's administration, and then also city council in that regard. it's always, no matter who you are, it's back to Paula Devon. You can never do as good as her. So maybe next year I might have to move myself somewhere other than good. So gonna just kind of go through these with you. I don't have any handouts for you, so I apologize for that. We'll kind of go through some of these items, mostly the ones that are changing from last year to this year, kind of talk about some of that and reallocation that's being proposed with our system. So going to start with mayor's administration. It's the easiest one to go through. Very little change in that regards. Just going to highlight two items. One is a new line item for uniform allowance. That would be for, again, the mayor's administration staff to allow them to get some shirts with city logos on those. So if they're at different events, they're at a lot of, the 4th of July community outreach events we have, they're often there, and even just around the office to allow them to get some shirts with some city logos on that to identify who they are. So they've been asking for that for a couple of years, and they decided that is a good thing to be able to highlight that to show that. So that's one new item in there. And then also computer equipment. On that, it shows up as R&M, office equipment, if you're looking at the line item budgets on there. So you know what that is, shows us $3,000 this year to provide for upgraded laptops for them if they're out and about. They use those also for their, instead of a tower, like a typical tower you would see or would have, a lot of them use their laptop instead of a tower. Kind of plug in there at the office, so that way they can have it at the office and also when they're out and about at different events or even at home still at home. So those are really the main changes for those I wanted to cover in theirs. So that would jump then to, I'll kind of do the mayor budget and the city council together, kind of move a few things around. And before we do get into it, there's two changes I wanted to note, and I apologize for them. I just copied these tonight while I was sitting here looking through these. I'm a lefty, which means my handwriting is not very good. Sometimes my 3s look like 8s, sometimes my 2s look like 7s. So if you'll notice so in the mayor's budget, the line item regarding community relations projects, it shows 48,000, that actually should be 43,000. So it's nice that we're going down, not going up, so it's always good. And then if you go to yours, for city council, the line item also for community relations shows 27,000, but that actually should be 22,000 on that. So that's actually a nice difference of $10,000 on them. So I apologize for anyone on that. I didn't notice that sooner, but we'll blame it on my handwriting. My parents tried to make me right-handed by tucking my hand behind my back with that hand when I was younger, but it didn't work. So kind of going through these, one of the main changes you'll see is starting with in the mayor's, the employee performance pay. So we reallocated that. So that is a drop of $10,000 from last year's budget to this year's proposed budget. So $10,000 reduction there, and then an increase of $10,000 in employee relations budget there. So remember, it's not a direct $10,000; it's less than that. That's the area that has some cost savings regarding the one-time expenses we had last year. Decoration for employee appreciation dinner, things like that, one-time expenses. So those obviously came out. So a net increase just over $8,000 on that rather than the whole $10,000. So the employee performance pay, what that is if employees are going above and beyond, their managers, appointed officials can, or the mayor himself, propose that the $300 one-time pay for that employee, kind of like a little bonus to just reward them. A great example on that is one of our employees, Michelle Davis, amazing worker that we have at City Hall. Of her own accord, did an amazing job redesigning our water bills. So when you get your water bill starting in August, it will no longer be the antiquated old city logo and very outdated looking. She's updated that with the new city logo. It's just one of those things that we should have done years ago. Like you just see it every day or every month, you don't think about it. So she kind of took it upon herself to redesign that, and just a little fantastic. It just is a really nice, clean, sharp look for the city. So we have to reward her with a little bonus on that. In that regard. So moving some of that, in looking at this budget year, we are nowhere near that $20,000. So allocating some of that down into employee relations where we can start doing. We love to reward our employees individually. We've noticed the employees really love to be rewarded as a whole with their team. And so moving that money down would allow us to do more team events with each department, going out to our street department to thank them and do a big celebration of them after chip sealing. Going maybe to our planning and zoning department, they get their comprehensive plan study, where they do these big events projects to go out and just have a day with them to, in some catered, like a food truck or whatever they be, just to kind of highlight that department. Show, notice that the departments really, really like that. It seems to get more out of it than just with individuals on that. So it still allows us to do individual highlights for people that are going above and beyond, but also highlighting the departments entirely. So asking to adjust that to move that allocation down to there. Other main difference, you'll notice in the city council budget, we are asking for request for $6,000 for office equipment and furniture. That would be to get each of you to, whether it's a laptop, Surface Pro, something of that nature, so you can have that for use outside of the city offices to be able to have that track, have your email, things like that on that, so that you have that opportunity to have something of that nature. So that's what that proposal is for. And that, so you notice that you go from 1,000 to 6,000, and that's for that reason there. And then in regards to the community relations, it is actually the 22,000, which is a significant increase from last year. And then in my community relations, it went down approximately $7,000 on that. So adjusting that, what that is where for community relations covers a lot of different areas. You know that we have the community outreaches that we do. I know Councilor Williams was able to join me last night out at Arbor, thank you very much, at the Arbor subdivision. I know each of you has been able to join over the past year, so and those have been wildly successful. Councilor Stoddard was all too successful in his neighborhood, where we had a huge turnout and unfortunately ran out of food. So they continue to grow and get bigger as people find out about it, and they just love those events, and we have a real increase in that to make sure that we're have adequate food and things like that for the community when they come out for those events. It also allows us to, to work with local organizations that they come in a lot, present to you, and there's been discussion about adding Metro Community Services that came in. There was discussion about how do we provide them with some funding from the city. Hope Store, Advocates Against Family Violence, they come in and provide funding, and that has always come just from the mayor's budget. I thought it'd be more appropriate to split that out so that it also comes from the city council too on that, so you can get some credit on providing those funds. So basically kind of took down, so for example, and there was some that we did increase, with inflation, things like that has been happening, has affected everybody's pocketbooks, so not just us, but these organizations as well. Hope Store, Advocates Against Family Violence is one, for example, where they've been receiving $5,000 each year. Thought was that should be increased, perhaps even doubled. Other areas like the Senior Center, Meals on Wheels, been receiving $8,000, so the proposals to increase that to $10,000. But again, splitting that between the mayor's office and also the city council. So that's the reason for that deduction in my portion of the budget, the mayor's office, and the increase in city council is splitting those. So for example, the senior farmers market, where the city provides a $5,000 fund for them to provide food, and I believe some of you have seen that at the farmers market, where the seniors are able to come in and get a voucher to buy fresh fruit and vegetables. Wildly successful, and that just continues to get even more successful every year. So rather than just that $5,000 coming out of the mayor's budget, now $2,500 from the mayor's, and $2,500 from the city council. Others such as the Meals on Wheels is the same thing. Rather than just $8,000 from the mayor, and increasing that to $10,000, $5,000 coming from the mayor's budget, and $5,000 from the city council's budget on that, just so that those costs can be split evenly between your budget and my budget in that regard. And I believe that is the main areas that I kind of wanted to cover, and changes, if I remember correctly, on that. So that would conclude kind of my presentation, and I would answer any questions that you might have. All good?
Good. Either Chris and I missed it, or you might have covered it within the city council, 4,000 for special projects. Do you have something identified for that, or what do you normally? It's gone down a little bit, but we're just curious of what that might.
go to in addition to everything?
So, let me get there one second, and let me call a lifeline, Madam Guyer on that too, so with her expertise, she knows our, so that is, okay, so, special projects, yeah, so it's 4250 last year, and proposal go get at 4,000 this year, correct? That's what, correct. So that, I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, any of this, and please chime in, Debbie. So special projects would be really anything that the city council sees as a special project. For example, the fountain in front of the train depot. So the train depot fountain that's getting, so there was if you ever saw it, you may not have, so it's kind of hidden behind where Norman Jewelers used to be. There was an old fountain there that's 100 years old. That was given out to different entities across the country. So it really got into disarray. So that originally was, very interesting, it was to water horses, people, and dogs. So it was a water fountain where people could drink out of, and there was a layer for horses to drink out of, and then it ran into the bottom for dogs to drink out of. So this was, again, back in the early 1900s. And very ornate and decorated, and it's kind of just been sitting there. So we are refurbishing it, moving it, maybe that's the easiest way to put it, in front of the train depot. So it's undergoing that. So that's a special project. You know, some in past, we're updating, the city council chamber, the meteor city council as well, things like that.
Logo, it was like all the city council chambers, those type of things that have been put.
Yeah, so just so everybody can hear, so like the logo, for example, in the city council, remember, used to have that really old metal. I imagine it was a welding shop, maybe a coal heights, and no disrespect to them, but it got very outdated. You have the new logo in there, so different projects like that is what those are.
I thought it would maybe be the 2 new microphones, I promise.
Yes, that's why I said 39, 50, it's 4,000. Yes,
Mr. Mayor, I had at least one question. I thought I had two, but I'll have to remember. So, you and your staff on day-to-day travel, do you guys have city vehicles? Do you get compensated to drive your own cars? How does that work in this budget? How does that fit?
Great question, and I know that Councilor Billy and I were talking a little bit about that the other day. So there's no designated vehicle for the mayor's office. So we have a vehicle for kind of like the 411, which is City Hall, and there are vehicles for that IT has for the truck and a white Ford Bronco Ford Explorer that sometimes gets used if Jeeps getting used. So we have a Jeep Grand Cherokee. Funny you mentioned that. I know Joanna mentioned this to me today. She's like, we need to talk about this. But anyways, over 100,000 miles, still runs, but it is animated. So my staff uses that, Ray Lynn's staff uses that, Debbie's staff, I know utility billing use that to go and get, so it's not specific vehicle for the mayor's administration, that for myself as well. So I usually use my own vehicle on that, and then that comes out of, the travel and meeting budget, so that gets allocated with the 61 cents, whatever it is per mile, whatever the federal Band-Aid is on that. So I turn in, every month a sheet with my mileage for the different meetings that I attend to in that regards. So I hadn't thought of it. I know I was talking to Councilor Doty the other day about, do we need to look into like whether it's a lease vehicle for the mayor to use so that we don't have issues with if there is an accident for insurance or things like that. So I never had really thought about that. So it's not in this year's budget, but something we could look at for next year. But as of right now, it's really just that one vehicle is kind of shared for all city staff. So that's usually why I use mine, because obviously they're out doing errands or this or that, going different places. And if I take it and gone half the day, then they don't have a vehicle that we get around.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree that probably a leased vehicle might be the option. We have a couple where I currently work, but for liability purposes, if you can clean and Ray probably even speak to this better than I can. But I certainly think it's something that we should consider, that we should look at. We're cutting the check probably anyway every month for what you're running your vehicle around for. And I just think it makes it cleaner if unfortunately there is some sort of incident.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. You know, and you're correct, that I haven't looked at these rates, but it would cover, I'm sure, at least half of whatever that cost would be covered, because then we would have to have that. And I would be, yes, more than amenable to that, so, my Dodge Dakota is not good, very good gas mileage, so no issues, on that, and my wife complains how much it squeaks as well, so. And we can definitely look into that too, so, I mean, the plan was maybe not till next year, but if we could look and see if there was any funding this year as well. So. Any other questions?
Mayor?
Yes.
So our combined community relations budget, if you take the mayors and the city councils, that's $40, $50, $60, $75,000 combined. Is that right? Am I doing my math right there?
65,000, is that what you said?
So community relations on the mayor's fund is 48,000, and community relations projects on the city council, you corrected that, 22, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So that's 48 and 22, so that's $70,000 total.
65, so it's 43 and 22.
40, those were two corrections, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, 6,000 each.
So $65,000 total in community relations. That's not just hot dog trucks for, Arbor and other things. What else are we spending out of there?
So yeah, no, that's a great question. It is not just that. So that is, that the donations that the city makes to many organizations in the community, the Meals on Wheels, for that program to go to feed the seniors in the community, for the senior farmers market, so the senior farmers market, the Caldwell Health Coalition, the Advocates Against Family Violence. So for example, Advocates Against Family Violence, that's $10,000 total for them. Proposal, the Meals on Wheels program senior center, that's an $8,000 donation that the city provides for them. The Metro Community Services is a $5,000. So the majority of that is supporting these organizations in the city and it is a good amount of money for that, but it does go to those good causes and helps them, again, that are providing services to Caldwell citizens. I had the opportunity I try to go out at least once a year with Meals on Wheels to deliver those to the public, and it's amazing what those meals do for those people. You go out and you visit, and your heart breaks on some of those when they answer the door, and some of them it's the only people they get to see during the day. It's the only hot meal that they get on that, and some just are not able to, don't have the energy or the ability to cook. So, you're able to see the effect of these. So this isn't just throwing money out the window. It really does provide a great service. So the majority of that definitely is providing, help to those organizations that really provide a needed service to our citizens here in Caldwell.
Yeah, admittedly, those are all great needs, and the one you named, I don't think anybody would object to us spending on. So I guess my follow-up question to that is there how is the process of decision made for how that $65,000 is spent? Is that something that just becomes within the mayor's budget and at your discretion? Because some of that is wrapped into ours, but I don't think we had any input into any of the events that we're doing, probably because we didn't give any input into them, and so maybe we need to think about that. But what's the process of the expenditure of that? And then the follow-up, is MIDOC included in this as well?
So that last question about Dr. Roberts, they are not. So the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council has been kind of a line item in the mayor's budget in the past. So that has been separated out. So obviously they raised their own money on that. So if you look at last year, it shows it's a big negative on the mayor's budget. That's because they had quite a balance in there, $50,000 plus. And so with the money they raised, they did spend more than they did last year. So with that extra money, you're able to take a few more kids to Washington, D.C., things like that. So they're kind of their own accord because they do not use any taxpayer dollars. It is all money that those kids earn and raise working at the Caldwell Night Rodeo, working at the football games for the College of Idaho, the gala that they do every year. So they do raise their own money. So everything that they use and spend is donations, money that they earn. None of that is taxpayer dollars. The other, and I apologize, I went too far, got the first question.
I think.
Oh, yes.
sorry, I remember. So how that's decided, so it's been, a lot of that has just been kind of long-standing of those organizations that have been given to over the years. And we did take some of that input during council this year, you know, when, for example, Metro Community Services, if you remember, when they came and presented, they have not in the past done a lot of that money. So I know there was some suggestions from the council, you know, we should support this organization. So that went in. The Advocates Against Family Violence, there was input from council saying we need to give them more money. So that's why we increased that, double that amount of what we give them. As well as, you know, the Meals on Wheels, the senior center. So we did take some of that consideration. That was from council as far as what is their desire, who we want to support, where should we increase it. So we did take some of that and added that into a lot of these others that have just, like I said, for over the years have been donated to the mayor's budget.
I think my concern really is for you in this regard, because that amount, that budget has gone up significantly over the last couple of years. And I just think it would be important, since it's the public money, that it doesn't just appear to be a slush fund that the mayor gets to dip into at his whim for these programs. So I think it's important that there be that disclosure of where these, you know, that's a lot of money. And it really is basically at your discretion at this point, because we haven't done anything with our half of it, but maybe we'll have a workshop on how the city council is done there. You know.
Yeah, definitely. That would be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I mention something about my end?
Yes, please. Great.
So for the fiscal year 24 budget, we did separate mine into its own general, so within GL code, so you can find that in tab 4. It's under a heading called General Fund City Building. So you will see it there listed, but it's a couple pages back. Under tab 4, so there's quite a few pages in tab 4.
Thank you.
What did you say that?
City building. It should be 0112 and then 800.
Then this would be kind of a fast food situation.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for that, or any questions on anything presented from that, or any final comments from any of the council members before we conclude? Yes, Councilor Alden.
I was just gonna say,
If you don't mind, grab that mic.
Oh, yeah.
We'll make sure Councilor can hear. Anybody else?
I was just gonna say, we have a pretty good group in the room, which is unusual. If it's public comment, I'd like to hear over what we covered this season.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Is there anybody in the audience that would have any comment at this point?
That's your chance.
Is that the first time, Tammy, that Mike hasn't had something to say? Start the time on Mike. No, but we would like to, we do have you up in the audience. We should definitely be here for that. Hear from Mr. Mike Dickberg, the Executive Director of Caldwell Housing Authority. Appreciate everything that they do. We've really strengthened that relationship, not that it was weak before, but strengthened that relationship with the city and the Housing Authority the last year, and really appreciate what they do for the city. And they're in the middle of it right now. So, yeah, remodel it. So.
Thank you. I appreciate the partnership with the city, and I appreciate everybody being here. I really appreciate everybody being the budget hawks thing on with regards to that. And providing scrutiny. One of the things I can tell you, if you manage a company like or people like Mr. Stonick, or maybe like, Councilmember Doty, is that you always, year after year, you kind of pinch the pennies, right? You make it smaller and smaller and smaller, and then at the end of the year, you go, oh, shoot, why are we overspent? And you go, well, try to put the right number in the beginning. And so, which do you, which criticism would you rather have? Would you rather have the criticism in the beginning, saying, oh, you know, they gave a little bit of extra money to pad the budget? Or would you rather have that criticism at the end, oh, you're overspent? Because really, it all equals out. Overspending, I kind of overspend, I can understand, but really, city budgets are kind of, you know, even force. So I appreciate the work that you put into it, and all the staff that's put into putting the budget together. Really, you've done a great job. I really like the fact that we've changed things from everything being a general, you know, budget line item to doing cost accounting and move it over to the right department. So you guys done a great job. I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. Maybe I'll just kind of highlight a few things you said too there, Mike, is with kind of the great job that Raylan and Rochelle and so many other staff are doing is, you know, we're really trying to look long term. You know, we don't want to just look to the next year, but, you know, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. And also, kind of like what Mike was saying, that, you know, you may be able to make your budget look really great today, but it may look really bad 12 months from now. And, you know, I think a highlight on that was when our city engineer presented one of the positions they were asking for, increase their budget by $100,000 plus after you put in benefits and things like that. But what they did was, in the past, we've had to contract a lot of that work. And so today it looks great because it shows $0 for that position. But by the end of the year, they literally spent $200,000 to $300,000 for a contractor to do the same work that we could have had somebody in-house doing it for half the cost and much quicker and more efficient. So we're really looking at those long-term costs, some of those hidden costs that maybe you don't realize, you know, like staff turnover, for example, like paying our employees more, getting the right employees in positions so people aren't overworked. Or you don't see the lost cost of having to train a new employee, the time that's lost, things of that nature. So if we can keep an employee on staff, that saves us tens of thousands of dollars for every one of those employees. Those are kind of those hidden costs you may not see in the budget today, but you feel that in our staff feel that if you're just churning people over and over again, then you're really not getting anywhere. So those increases in wages, the new positions are so key, and I know that myself and all the staff are so appreciative of council recognizing that and, you know, approving those, and we hope to continue to approve those because it makes a long-lasting effect on that. And I've had so many staff come and just thank me, and obviously thanks you in reciprocity for that, of, you know, the increased wages, and not only that, but just the increase of staff. They've noticed that, and they appreciate that, not only for town, having other people to help them rely on. So those are huge items, kind of like when Mike was talking about. You gotta not just look at what the number looks like today, but really what is that gonna look like a year from now, 2, 3 years from now. So appreciate that comment. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Community, the person from the community. Two things that I wanted to look at, fire budget. I think he had asked for 200,000 to drag water out to their training station. I talked to Chief Crawley about it. From an engineering standpoint, I do civil work for a living. Even thought it might be something that you might look into for the next year, if that is an approved budget item, maybe looking at using that money for Station 1 land purchase and having a big enough plot that they can actually do their training center there. It would almost end up being cheaper, because I don't know if they're going to need fire water all the way out there. Especially with, you're going to need a recycle pump, there's going to be, there's a lot of engineering involved with water that far out. Second thing would be just a suggestion for the public. for these reoccurring things that you give out to the community, line item them. Right now, it's just seeing the $70,000 that disappears, and like you said, it's kind of hard to. It'd be nice for us to be able to see that these are ones that reoccur every year.
Yeah, no,
So just suggestion.
yeah, no, appreciate that, so, okay. Very good, thank you so much. Anything else? Okay, well, appreciate it, we'll see you back here tomorrow. Same that time, same